are now tuned in to the Lineman Lounge, the world's thickest sports podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Evo.
¿Cómo están, bitches? This is the Lineman Lounge. I'm Mike. The man to my right, as always, is Thick Evo, and we are back on a beautiful Sunday. It's actually not beautiful here. It's snowing again, but I am pumped to fucking be here. We have a crazy week of sports to go over. People getting cut all over the place. The Bengals doing crazy, dumb shit. March Madness is getting ready to kick off. It's Selection Sunday. There is a ton of stuff to go over. I've already had a busy morning. I got done finishing up a paper for my principles of social media class this morning. Turned in a script this week. So, man, I am just knee deep. We're midterms. I'm on spring break now, but I am pumped to be here with you, Evo. How's the weekend going? Are you ready to get into free agency talk? Because there is some crazy shit that's gone down. Cap casualties that I didn't even expect.
Yeah, weekend for me has been pretty good so far. Pretty laid back. Just some more chores and things like that. Doing a little bit of cooking. I had some fried pork tenderloin sandwiches last night, which is like an old school favorite of mine. You know, where you get the big dinner plate of a pork tenderloin on this tiny ass little bun. You know, it's kind of like my body and my penis. Just disparaging to myself there, but it's been a good weekend so far. Doing a little bit of housekeeping stuff in order, because I'm actually going to be coming around to your neck of the woods here again later this week. Wasn't too sure that was going to happen until pretty late into this week, but we're going to be going out there for a little trip to see some kids, have a good time.
Yeah.
So really excited about that. Unfortunately, not going to be seeing you because going to be all the way on the western side of the state, and that really is going to, kind of be interesting for our next show. So next Sunday, we're expecting to go over this first week roll-up of free agency, because for everyone to be aware of, the tampering period, illegal tampering period's already fucking been happening. We know this.
Yeah.
But the actual allotted tampering period starts tomorrow. That's when we're going to start seeing all sorts of building blocks fall down for these teams for next year's season. And then on the 15th is when the new league year begins. That's when players can officially start to sign. But you're going to already hear, starting tomorrow, the deals. Players will have deals locked in place like as soon as free agency opens, which is how you know that there was actual illegal tampering, because these guys don't come to terms on these deals in 5 minutes, but you're going to have within an hour of the bell ringing and illegal tampering starting, these guys are going to have multi-million-dollar contracts worked out with all sorts of little things here and there. So you can expect that to happen here pretty damn quick. And with that, there's a lot of other exciting stuff going on around the league, things that we've been tracking this whole offseason, talking about last year. We got Aaron Rodgers' contract situation and whether or not he's going to retire, whether or not he's going to become a yogi, what he's going to fucking do. That I believe is going to happen tomorrow. I believe it's got to happen tomorrow. If he is a decent human being. So that's a big if. We also have like Lamar Jackson and that whole situation to figure out. So I always talk about, I love the off season and I love these events. Combine is awesome to watch, but I love the whole combine and scouting these players as they're coming up. But realistically, the free agency tampering period and signing of free agents, that and the draft are like the two biggest events for me. So we have almost like a mini Christmas happening tomorrow for me. I think I said that in years past. It's like Christmas whenever free agency or the draft happens. It's like, what presents are we going to get? But you're right. We have had a lot of stuff happen, a lot of cap casualties, restructures, things like that. My team definitely had to do that. We were 24 some odd million over the cap, and we're still over the cap by about 5 to 7 million, depending on where you look. Some salary things haven't been updated, but we've had to cut veteran guys that I've just gotten really used to being a part of my Vikings team for the past 8 to 10 years. And I knew it was going to happen. It's sad to me, but it's the bullet that has to be bit. We have to do this, and there's more to come, honestly.
And it's not just your team. It's going to be every team, because there are teams that are still over the cap And they have until Wednesday before the new league year to make sure that they are under the cap. So we're going to see more cap casualties. We're going to see legal tampering. We're going to see teams signing guys who are over the cap and still working out ways that they are going to get under the cap. So there's going to be a lot more guys that are going to be cap casualties over the next 48, 72 hours.
And of course, this doesn't want to pull up right now. Apparently, they're having some technical support issues. But over the cap is, if you don't use over the cap to kind of track salary cap things for your team, or run maybe like the cap calculator where you can do that individually for your team, you can actually renegotiate contracts for players, or see what will happen with them if you do a pre-June 1st cut, post-June 1st cut, trade, anything like that. A lot of people are used to playing Madden, right? When they want to set up and build their team.
Right.
So let's go on there and they'll start trading players, and the computer sometimes will take some wonky shit. But do you really take care of your cap space? Not really. The game is like looking at that as an ancillary feature.
Right. You cannot manipulate the cap in that game the way that these guys in real life are manipulating the cap, because they will convert money from regular cap space to signing bonus to make sure that you're under the cap, but you're still getting your money. There's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on with these cap meetings.
Yeah. So being able to see all of this information of who actually has what. I mean, we got the Saints, who they have shed a lot of cap space so far, but they're still 25 million over the cap. They have like 3 days to get 25 million under the cap.
Yeah.
And that's not even allowing for like the 7-ish million that you're going to have to pay towards draft picks. That is bringing in no free agents. Obviously, they already signed one, Carr.
Big time signing there. We're going to talk about it.
And I honestly don't even know if that cap number has been fit in yet with the new league year stuff. I know that they've agreed to the deal, signed the deal, and everything like that, but they're going to have to do some wonky shit with this contract to make it work, where a lot of this money's pushed into future years, because this year is just not a good one. The Saints have, obviously, they've had a lot of success, but they're known for really kicking the can down the road. And I just don't know how this team is going to be set up for years in the future. They're going to be fighting the salary cap constantly.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting on how these teams find a way to manipulate the cap, because everybody's going to make it under. There's just one way or another, everybody's getting under.
Yeah.
So some of the guys that you love on your team are not going to be there. It's just the way it is. The NFL is a business. It will always be a business, which is why I think, at least for me, and I think I speak for you as well, Evo, if this is a business, that's why we're team player. Go out and get your fucking bag as soon as you can, man. Take as much money as you can get, because this is a business. They will cut your ass if you are a cap. If your production doesn't match the cap later on in your contract, they will dump you, and they are able to get out of that because most contracts in the NFL are not guaranteed unless you are one of our two quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins or fucking Deshaun Watson. Those are the only guys that are guaranteed to get their money. So if you can go out and get your bag, go fucking get it.
Those contracts typically for lower end players, non-quarterbacks, aren't fully guaranteed for the most part. However, it still does come into play where some of those guarantees get pushed into later years, so that way cap hits in earlier years don't matter as much. Case in point, my Vikings, we released Adam Thielen just a couple days ago. It's a move that I knew was going to happen. It was someone where I was like, oh man, I wish we could trade him for like a 6th or 7th, even a future 6th or 7th, just to get some sort of compensation back for him and not take the full brunt of his contract. But we are carrying, I believe, like 12 or 13 million dollars of dead money from his contract this year alone, from just cutting him as a pre-June 1st cut. But he was the second highest paid player on our team at like 18 million a year. And you're talking top end number one type receiver money for a lot of teams. And Thielen has not performed like that in the past 2 years. He still has great hands, tons of touchdowns.
He just lost the stat, man. He doesn't have the juice.
18 million receiver. Yeah, he's slower. He's keeps on dealing with nagging little injuries and stuff like that, which the guy is about to be 33, 34 years old, which is what you expect. And that's kind of when players start to fall off a cliff there, especially at the receiver position.
And
It
you know
just
what? I feel
doesn't
you,
make
Adam
sense.
Thielen. I'm 35 and my body's fucking falling apart. So
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to have the guy playing at that cap number. And so sometimes you have the players that'll understand that and be like, okay, yeah, I'm getting paid a little bit too much. So I'll take a reduction. But Thielen, and this is, I love Adam Thielen and I love the grit and fire that he has. I understand he's come out and said, I want to keep on playing. I think I'm still a top end receiver, especially when I'm healthy. I've got a lot left to give this league, and I don't want my role to be reduced along with that salary. I get that. I get it. What I don't like is when you have your wife come out and start making Instagram posts and this and that and the other that are kind of disparaging. I mean, immediately after our final game, she said, "Oh, I think this is probably it for our time here in Minnesota, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for the fans and everything. But we just need to go somewhere where we're respected and where, you know, we're going to be given a role and everything like that." And it's like, we is not the people playing the game. Don't get me wrong. The family's involved.
they are. This
but-
sounds very
but
much
it's your
like a
husband-
military wife.
It's
This
your
sounds
husband
so
who's
much like a
playing,
military wife.
and he is old for this league. He's young for you, old for this league. And it's not something that you should be talking about. If I was Adam Thielen, I'd be going back to my wife and be like, could you shut the fuck up, please? Let the adults talk here. And then the same thing when we cut him. You have the Vikings coming out and giving him a nice farewell on all their social media. You have Adam giving a very nice farewell, and his wife coming out and being like, "Deuces, see ya, bye-bye. At least we're gonna go somewhere where we're respected now." And it's like, you've been.
I don't understand.
This is the only team that gave
you've had a great career there in Minnesota. Don't burn the bridge.
It's the only team that
he's
gave you a
gonna go back.
chance.
He's gonna fucking retire there. He's gonna retire there.
He's definitely a Ring of Honor guy for the Vikings.
Yeah,
I mean, a homegrown guy, undrafted free agent. We're the only team that gave you a shot, and we've given you millions and millions and millions of dollars. Obviously, this contract, he didn't just get 18 million this year. He's been, 10 plus million
on this.
10 plus million for several years.
Yeah.
It's been a while. So, he's got a very healthy lifestyle, a very nice life. The Vikings and the fans have loved him. And it was just, the money doesn't make sense now. And your age doesn't make sense. And your production doesn't make sense. And it's sucks that has to be part of the business, but you got to be able to recognize that too. She can support her husband all she wants, but publicly it just isn't a good look. So
yeah, well, and I think Adam Thielen, and we're going to talk about these all these positions as we go on. Adam Thielen still has the ability to play in this league, but I think Adam Thielen also needs to come to the realization that he is going to have a reduced role, because there's really only one spot, in my opinion, where he works out of now, and he can only work out of the slot. He's going to give you that Jarvis Landry type production. He's not very fast. He can do some interesting things. He's a good route runner. Solid hands, will move the sticks, but he's not a guy that I'm looking to throw the ball to 15 to 25 yards down the field, because he's not going to separate, because he's not going to have the speed. He is good in those intermediate, like short to intermediate routes, and then can maybe move the sticks a little bit, but he's going to have a reduced role.
He's a 5 to 10 yard route depth receiver now, with good hands. Where he's phenomenal still is the red zone. The guy finds openings in the red zone and has the hands to catch the ball there.
He's a smart player.
Even last year, he still, had a bunch of touchdowns because he's good in the red zone. And I believe I saw some stat where it's like the last 5 years, he still has like the 5th most touchdown catches in the NFL over those last 5 years. Like, his production has diminished, but his touchdowns have kind of maintained the same. So if you are looking for a solid veteran receiver with good hands, not even necessarily a slot guy, I'm saying just like
I think he works out of the slot.
That's your number 3 type of receiver, situational guy, someone that you are not leaning on, depending on. He's a good get. And to me, on the top end, that's an $8 to $9 million a year receiver.
Yeah.
And he's definitely looking for something closer to 14 still, which
I don't know if he's good.
It's kind of crazy.
We'll talk about some of those contracts as we go on. But before we start diving into more and more of those storylines, I do want to talk about some local stuff. I am rocking some of my Cleveland State gear. Anybody who's on the Facebook, or if you follow us on Twitter, you've probably already seen Cleveland State women's basketball team punched their fucking ticket to the big dance. They're going to March Madness. And Evo, you're going to love this. So you and I both know from our time just watching sports, but also we've been breaking down sports for, a couple of years now. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year, right? And I don't think what sport doesn't matter. Yeah. Well, throughout the season, Cleveland State had a great record. They dropped the game. First game of the season, Iowa State, number 8 in the country, very good team. They lose a game to Northern Kentucky that they shouldn't lose, but their other 2 losses on the season came at the hands of Green Bay, Wisconsin, Green Bay. I know that you, especially a Vikings fan, and this is the Cleveland State Vikings, are not happy about any time a Vikings team loses to a Green Bay team. Well,
fuck Green Bay.
Fuck Green Bay. Agreed. Cleveland State made it to the championship game, and they ran into the Horizon League regular season champions, the Green Bay team, who beat them twice in the season. And guess fucking what? You can't beat a team 3 times in a year. Cleveland State gets a big fat fucking dub and is moving on. I am super pumped for those ladies. They have the selection show today. We'll figure out where they're seated, where they're playing. Congratulations, ladies. I am so excited for you guys. I mean, obviously I'm not a part of the team, but I am very much emotionally invested in this team just because of the warm welcome I have had. So congratulations. I'm super pumped to see where you guys are going and to see how far you can make it in this tournament. Congratulations.
That's awesome, man.
Deja was on our show.
Yeah, you might not be a part of the team, you might not be playing, but you're a Viking. You go to Cleveland State. That's your team.
Damn right I do. It is my team. That is my team. Now, luckily, Cleveland State does not have a football team, so I don't have to worry about dividing fandom there. We'll still stick with Ohio State, but in terms of basketball, I'm all Cleveland State, especially because Ohio State's basketball team, well, their men's team was fucking terrible. The women's team is pretty good, but all right. That's all I got local-wise. I got nothing else going on for a little bit. Graydon is still doing wrestling practice. Season's over. Just doing that to stay in shape. Started our throwing program. Baseball season is coming up. I will be a head coach, and I believe this beautiful podcast will be the sponsor of one of those teams, probably my team. Nice. So we'll be out there rocking the sponsorship, our logo on those kids. I just got to make sure I don't let them say fuck too much because I don't think their parents will like it.
Don't stunt their growth. Don't stunt their ability to use the English language.
You know what?
It's a word.
There are no such thing as bad words. I know that my mother absolutely disagrees with me when I say that, but there are no such thing as bad words. They're just fucking words. And the way, if you can figure out a way to use them, that's all they are words. But with that, let's start diving into some of the shit that is going on in the NFL before we get into free agency, because shit's been fucking wild. And I'm going to start with a story that I actually kind of had to tell you about. It's a big story here in Ohio, but maybe it's not necessarily out there too much in the rest of the world yet. But there are some interesting things going on with the Cincinnati Bengals, and it comes at a really terrible time that this is made public, in my opinion. Cincinnati Bengals are trying to strip the players in the state of Ohio, so that's the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns, of their ability to claim workman's compensation. Now, I wasn't sure what compensation they could get, but as part of the CBA, the NFL players are able to file for workers' compensation for long-term disabilities and things like that. And it's already worked in, so there should be no way that anybody is able to take that from them except the NFL. But what the Bengals are doing, I believe, the way it reads, they are trying to go around the state and use the state laws to prohibit players from being able to gain compensation for disabilities. Now, if a player gets hurt, that's part of the game. We all know that. We all know that is part of the game. But if there is something extraneous, like say you're Tyrod Taylor and a doctor punctures your fucking lung with a needle and you can't play for the rest of the year, you should be able to gather compensation from that because that is the fault of somebody else. The Bengals are trying to, from what it seems, take that ability away. That is really fucking bad look. And
let's be clear here. Tyrod's getting paid for that.
Tyrod is absolutely getting paid for that. Yeah.
So he's making plenty of money, but for a lower end player, someone that maybe isn't as well known of a name or something like that, if something like that were to happen, you don't necessarily have the money sitting around all the time to go after people in a legal battle, and those legal battles can take quite a long time. So in the interim, a workman's comp situation definitely makes sense there, because the NFL probably doesn't have provisions, or the Players Association doesn't have provisions for that to float a player while that's getting figured out. This story is something that I hadn't heard of until you brought it up to me earlier. And I had just, like telling you, I had assumed that NFL players didn't get workman's comp, that they worked something through the league, through the Players Association. It turns out that that is what it kind of is the Players Association does have this worked out, that you get workman's comp through your state. So like you brought this up, I wasn't aware of it. I looked it up, and it is that the Players Association who's basically calling foul on this from the get-go. Right. They're the ones that are going to help fight this in court and everything to prevent the Bengals from doing this. And I have to do more research on this, because I'm not even sure of what the actual workman's comp rules are state to state, and how, like, if it is just normal for most teams to have workman's comp available to them in their state, or if there's something saying like, hey, you are playing in a dangerous professional organization that is physically going to torment your body, you are waiving your right to this workman's comp, or something like that. I'm completely unaware. But it is interesting. It's something that's gonna have to be watched. And then when you go to free agency, it's something that players will probably pay attention to, or they'll write it in their contract. They'll write it in their contract, like, hey, like, okay, we'll come sign with you. However, we might not get workman's comp if something happens through the state now, but you have to pay me a requisite workman's comp, whatever the state would have paid. I want the team now to pay me this, or something like that.
There is now a requirement in an insurance policy on my body that you as the team will now cover. That maybe you could work that or into your contract, but the way the Bengals operate, they are one of the they have one of the poorest owners in the NFL. And I use that term very fucking loosely. They are not poor. They are filthy goddamn rich. But they don't have a ton of money. This is a team that didn't have a goddamn indoor practice facility. They're trying to take away workers' compensation. Like, it's a really bad look right before the legal tampering period and free agency kicks off. And they got some fucking dudes that are going to free agency that I guarantee will not be back. They won't be able to pay them. And there will be guys that now just won't want to go back because of what is happening inside that organization. One of those targets, Jesse Bates, is very high on my radar. And like, it cannot be a good look for the Bengals as an organization to be like, yeah, you know what? Fuck them. I need them here. I need them to play. And if they're not playing, even if they fucking do play and they play great, but they get hurt or we fuck them up, fuck them. Like, that's what this sounds like to me. I am not a lawyer, right? This is not fucking legal advice in the least bit, but the way it reads is really goddamn bad. I mean, the NFLPA put out a tweet to all of the NFL players with a goddamn link that anybody could click on to get to the NFLPA website. Now, once you click on that link, you can't go anywhere unless you're an NFL player and you have login information. But they made this very public. Like, hey, everybody, take a look at this shit, log in, and let's get working on this. The NFLPA is not fucking around with this. This is going to be a big, big deal. I would be surprised if the league doesn't get involved here very shortly, because this is not an issue that will only affect the Bengals. This affects the Browns as well. This affects multiple teams in the NFL. And this is a copycat league. If one team sees an owner get away with this, you can guarantee others will follow suit.
Yeah, it's very true. So it'll definitely be an interesting one to watch there. Some other news. So we had Derek Carr get signed by the Saints, first kind of quarterback name to drop earlier this week. I think at the end of the day, we kind of figured it was between like the Jets and the Saints. And it seems that the Jets have their eyes elsewhere right now.
Yes.
So how do you feel about the fit there for Carr in New Orleans?
I actually really like the fit for Carr. I think he will fit in great with the fan base and with that team, because that team does have weapons, assuming that they can all get back fucking healthy. Now, Michael Thomas, we have not seen him actually play in quite some time. Is Michael Thomas still a decent receiver?
Yeah, he played a
Hopefully.
little bit last year.
Played a little
and in
bit,
those
but
games,
then
he looked good. But then the injury bug was back.
the injury bug is back, right? So
Mhm.
you can't depend on Michael Thomas, I don't think, right now to be your number one. Had number one abilities when he was healthy, but he's missed a lot of football.
That's why they got Olave out there.
But exactly, you get Olave out there. Olave can become a number one, and you have a Michael Thomas who was a number one, is maybe becoming a number two. So they have some weapons there. Alvin Kamara had a really bad year, and I think a lot of that had to do with off the field issues that were maybe pervading into what was going on. Also, the offensive line did not perform great. I think they will be better. They'll probably address that.
Well, that team as a whole on offense just wasn't very good, and to me, that really centers around that quarterback position. You've got Andy Dalton playing. He is a subpar quarterback. He's the type of guy that you want to be a backup and not to have to play more than a game here or there. But the rumors that we had been hearing all season was that the Saints really wanted him to be the starter. They didn't want old
Jameis.
crab legs to be the starter out there.
And how big of an indictment is that on Jameis? The fact that they would not play him when healthy over a very aging and could clearly see the age on the field, Andy Dalton.
Yeah, it's rough there. So you bring in a competent quarterback, and now you reassess the weapons that you have in that team. You got Olave, you got Michael Thomas if they're able to re-sign him, because right now his contract is untenable as well. You've got Juwan Johnson at tight end, who's a decent tight end, and Troutman is a guy that they had just drafted in the second round, I believe, like 2 years ago. Was kind of highly touted, also not really shown a ton and had some injury issues. You have Kamara there, who has shown to be extremely good in the past, but is probably some of his value is lost because A, running backs devalue, B, he has the off the field issues, and C, your team becomes way less dynamic on offense because you just don't have a quarterback.
And
It
don't get me
elevates
wrong,
all those players around him.
I like Alvin Kamara, but I have never had Alvin Kamara as high as other people have had Alvin Kamara. I have never had him higher than the fifth best back because he is not an every down back.
Yeah, he's not your
he needs another
runner.
guy. He needs a fucking running mate. He cannot be your workhorse. Alvin Kamara is or was incredibly special at all the things that he did because he had another guy. You didn't have to give Alvin Kamara 350, 400 touches because you had another guy in a Mark Ingram. Thank you. Mark Ingram, who was able to
Latavius Murray.
Or Latavius Murray.
They had those two guys for a long time, and those are your true running backs.
Yes.
And Kamara can run, but he's much more of an open space type of guy and a receiver.
Right. So he needs another guy. So they're probably going to they will probably draft a running back in this draft at some point, I would imagine. No, they won't go that high because they also have some other needs. They need offensive line help. Their defense is pretty good. They may lose a couple of pieces there, but a spot where they really need to improve, a team that really kind of revolutionized the way the position was played with the Jimmy Graham. They need a fucking tight end. Really bad, who can affect the middle of the field. They have not had that in quite some time. Basically, since they have lost Jimmy Graham, they got Ben Watson for a little bit, who was a great red zone threat, but not the same weapon. That team really, really needs a tight end. Derek Carr loves a nice tight end. He's had Darren Waller for quite some time. Well, when Darren Waller's healthy, he's had Darren Waller, and it was very successful. I love the fit. They need to do a little extra work, but that's going to be really tough considering the cap situation that the Saints are fucking in, because they are still 20 plus million over the cap. There's going to be some hard decisions. There are going to be guys that are either going to have to restructure or they're going to accept their outright release. The only way it's going to work.
For me, looking at that Saints team, the draft in the first round or those early rounds definitely seems like it needs to be offensively focused. It's just going to be other players there available to them when they pick. I'm going to quick pull up here cap calculator for the Saints. So right now they got Cam Jordan, who's got a $25 million cap hit there at 30.
I love Cam Jordan. Love Cam Jordan. That's got to come down. He's going to be a cap casualty, or it's got to have to be a restructure.
$25 million a year, almost 26. It's just under 26 at his age of 34. He's gotta only have a year or two left in him. Marshawn
Convert it to a
Lattimore.
fucking signing bonus and pay Cam Jordan, who's been a vital member of your team for a fucking decade. That is it should be a quick fix. And I think Cam would be like, okay, cool. Give me the fucking money right now.
You've also got Marshawn Lattimore, who's set to make $22 million against the cap this year. Who's again
Marshawn
awesome.
is so good.
He's only 27 years old.
Injuries have really held him back.
Jameis Winston is going to be probably an easy cut.
He's out.
The thing is that you cut him straight up. It's 11.2 in dead cap.
What is it post June 1 though?
And 4.4 million in savings. Post June 1 is a 12.8 million cap saving. But the thing is here is that, again, this Saints team, I think that they're going to be able to look decent this year, especially with Carr there. But in order to get cap compliant, the moves that they have to make is going to kick the can down the road even further. You do this post June 1st cut, yeah, you're saving 12.8 this year, but you are taking a heavy hit come 2024 again. So for Jameis, that's an 8.4 million dead cap not to have him on the team next year that you're still paying the guy. So it's stuff like that where some of these teams are they've got to make the tough decisions, kicking the can down the road a little bit, or take the tough decision now, get cap compliant and lose a lot of your veterans, which is like what my Vikings are doing. With Thielen, they could have done the post June 1st cut. We would have had a small cap hit this year, but we would have kept on paying him years down in the future. So they did the tough thing. They just outright cut him right now.
Yeah. And that's going to be this case. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the fit. I think they can be very successful. I don't think I ever liked the idea of Carr going to New York. Now that team is very good. The fit doesn't seem like it makes sense to me. I mean, Derek Carr he's a Fresno State kid, was out in Oakland, then Vegas. Like, I don't think that Derek Carr plays well.
I think
for the media,
all the teams,
in the New York market,
all the teams that had like a major quarterback vacancy, I think the Jets was the most enviable spot, the place where players would want to go the most, not because of the market or because of how tough it is to play for that team, but just because of the roster construction.
So
that team is
good.
Really set up, ready to make a deep playoff push if they have a quarterback there.
And I think we're going to figure out who that quarterback is tomorrow.
Hopefully. Or at least we'll have a better idea.
Yeah.
Starting tomorrow.
But I mean, Derek Carr, I do like the move. It makes sense to me. I think it can work. And also Sid can keep the black eyeliner and rock it with the Saints. So I love that for him.
All righty. In other news, this is one more personal, close to home for me. The Vikings lost their Hall of Fame head coach, Bud Grant, at the age of 95 yesterday. Obviously, at that sort of an age, you knew that it was something that was going to happen sooner or later. I posted about this on the Lineman Lounge page, what John Madden was to the rest of the league. Bud Grant was to Vikings and Vikings fans. It's one of those first things that I learned about the team was, hey, like, here's some of the greats that have played for your team, and this was the best coach that your team ever had. Bud Grant, this Vikings team went to 4 Super Bowls, didn't win any of them. Bud Grant was a huge part of that, though, like getting teams and rosters together with Purple People Eaters and all these amazing squads of the past, that black and blue team of the NFC North. Bud Grant was the guy behind all of that. And to the point, like, up until his death yesterday, he still is an advisor on the team. He still has an office at the team headquarters. This guy is out there every year and has been out there every year with the team during training camp and whatnot, and around the players. The players all love him, and all those veteran players that play for him have all come out talking about fantastic football coach, greater person. This was the guy that we would go, on the weekends or the summers, we'd go fishing with, we'd go hunting with. Like, he was our bud. We were always with him. And my favorite Bud Grant moment was, I believe it was 2012, something like that, where the Vikings were playing Seattle in the playoffs. The Metrodome roof had collapsed, and we were playing at TCF Bank Stadium, the Gophers Stadium, and it was considered to be one of the coldest games in NFL history. It was -6 degrees out and even colder with the wind, and all the players, on the opposing sideline were wrapped up and everything. And then for the coin toss, out walks Bud Grant in just this short sleeve polo shirt, hobbling across the field like, fuck this, I'm going to go for the coin toss. And of course, he goes out with, Adrian Peterson and a bunch of other guys, and those guys are all stripped, no sleeves as well. They're like, we're going to be hard for this game. And we lost that game thanks to Blair Walsh and a shanked fucking kick at the end. But that's like one of my favorite Bud Grant moments is like, this guy is in his 90s, still a badass. He's like, fuck the cold weather. I'm a Minnesotan. I'm going out there like this.
If that isn't a dichotomy of the Vikings fandom and fuck Browns fandom as well, it starts off so great. It looks like you're just being a badass, and then it ends with just an absolute fucking shank.
Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things about Bud Grant too, that he always did every year, having been in and around the league for so long, he has tons and tons of football memorabilia. Really cool stuff. Every year, Bud Grant's hosts Bud Grant's yard sale at his actual house. He has a yard sale every year where he has a whole bunch of those items, puts them out in the driveway, and has a little garage sale where you can come up and buy memorabilia items. All those items, the money earned from it, all goes to charity. So every year he would do that locally in Minnesota. So that was a really cool thing. And I'm sure that his family is going to probably continue doing something along those lines with his estate. I know there's going to be a big ceremony for him coming up shortly. His kids came out and said, like, of course we're mourning the loss of Bud, but this isn't about us. Bud wasn't just our father. He was the fans' coach. And so everyone deserves to have a moment with Bud. So they're going to do a nice ceremony for him here shortly.
Well, that's good. The NFL and the Vikings family lost a great one in Bud there. So thoughts and prayers out to his family. I mean, obviously, 95 is a great, great life, but we want to send our condolences to the family because, I mean, the guy was an absolute legend in Minnesota.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, you're going to see the BG or something like that on the helmets this year. I'm sure that they'll do something nice for him. It's too early in the year for that to be our honing reason as why we go win the Super Bowl.
Right,
but,
right.
It'll be a good dedication to him this year.
Good. All right. So that was it was a good positive note, but it was also very sad. We're gonna have to change subjects though. We're gonna have to transition into a shitty story. And once again, it involves the goddamn Cincinnati Bengals. Because why the fuck wouldn't it involve the Cincinnati Bengals, especially if it involves players doing dumb shit with guns? Joe Mixon's gonna get cut, right? Like, you can't have this happen, especially considering Joe Mixon's past. Anybody who doesn't know, there were apparently some shots fired at Joe Mixon's house when there were some kids outside, and things got out of hand. I don't know all of the details, but Joe Mixon has a history of some domestic violence issues in his past. He is a great running back, but his talent has dipped. And now you have this thing come up where there's shots fired at your house with kids outside. Like, you can't retain him, can you? I mean, you can just give him a suspension and hold on, and you can pay him, but what is the point? And they're going into a year where they have Samaje Perine, who is their second back, going to the free agency. So they're hurting right now to figure out what's going to happen at that running back spot. Almost certainly Joe Mixon gets suspended. I'm feeling like he's going to get cut, though.
So obviously the reports came out and no one really knew what was going on right away. This is an event that took place at Joe Mixon's house. The police have come out now and said that he is not a suspect. He was not involved. Okay, he was not there. Right now, the lead suspect is Joe Mixon's sister, or named as one of the suspects.
So I missed that.
Reportedly, a 16-year-old kid was running around the outside of the house with a Nerf-style toy gun. A 16-year-old kid with something that looks like a firearm, but maybe a toy firearm. Maybe it might have even looked a lot like a toy firearm. I don't know. But then,
well, if it's a Nerf gun, I guarantee it looks like a lot like a fucking toy gun, because Nerf specifically makes their products to look fake,
orange and blue and stuff like that. But the reports say Nerf style toy gun, so who knows? But either way, Per the documents released by the police there, an unknown suspect or suspects fired up to and around allegedly 11 rounds. It sounds like
that's a lot of bullets.
yeah. So it sounds like possibly there was some injuries. The boy was transported to the hospital. He had a bullet lodged in his foot. So as far as Mixon getting cut because of this,
so I had not heard that he had been cleared.
Yeah.
So that is good.
He's been cleared.
I
don't expect him to get suspended. This is like if you're a player and it turns out that your mom or something like that,
you
does a little coke on the weekends, you can't suspend the player for that unless they're involved.
Yeah. So
right?
I had not heard. Thank you for updating me. I had not heard that Joe Mixon had been cleared and it was apparently not there. All the things that I have seen, and this is Cleveland, this is Brownstown, so we're always just shitting on the Bengals at any opportunity. I had not seen that Joe Mixon had been cleared. So
and the stuff that I even had put up on the Lineman Lounge page initially and stuff like that kind of pointed in that direction, because when there's a vacuum of information, you don't know what it is. You might as well fill in the holes with some interesting juicy
with
stuff.
Memes, 100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, when it comes to Joe Mixon's status, though, with the team, like you did bring up, Samaje Perine in Joe Mixon's stead last year looked pretty good, but he's a free agent. And I think that just kind of goes to show again that you don't need necessarily the top tier running back on a team in order to put together a competent offense. You can have pieces that work well, and Samaj showed that. Mixon right now, he does carry a relatively high cap hit. Currently he's owed 12.7 mil this year, which for a running back is somewhat on the higher end. If they were to cut him, he would take about 5.5 million dead cap, but 7.2 mil savings. You could absolutely cut him, bring back Samaje Perine and probably a $2 to $3 million deal or something like that, and have a total of 4 mil cap savings if you wanted to. I think that Mixon would also be a candidate possibly for a trade at that point if they were really looking at moving on from him. Mixon can be very good. We've seen him be very good. Yes, he's had that legal trouble and stuff in the past. He has had times when he just kind of disappears. Yeah. So and that
I went from 50 points. I went from 50 points in a fantasy week to like fucking 4. So that was tough.
It might be that offense is so set up for the pass that the running game is not as important to him, unless it is like a Samaj Perine type situation where he runs the ball here or there and you can get some big chunk yardage from it. But is it worth paying a guy 12.7 to do that? Probably not at that point. It's the same reason why the Chiefs have a platoon of guys and they're paying them like in total less than 5 million in order to get the production that they're getting. So Mixon definitely is a potential cut candidate or trade candidate, but I don't think anything's going to stem from this shooting situation as far as his release at that point.
All right. So we got one more major storyline before we start diving into some of these free agents. And we all knew this was happening, or I think we all knew this was coming at some point. But the Bears have traded pick number 1. They have traded it to the Carolina Panthers. I did not see that being the team that would make the trade, but the Bears did a fucking great job in this, getting max value. And I don't understand why it had to be this high. Maybe because they were going from 9 to 1 for the Panthers, but I mean, the Bears are getting number 9 this year, fucking number 61 this year. Next year's first round pick, 2025's second round pick, and a guy that I really like his ability and just hasn't been able to get consistent fucking quarterback play in DJ Moore. The Bears just hit fucking bomb with this move. But where does this leave the Panthers now in the future? Because they also need some help. They traded CMC, got a bunch of second round picks. Now they lose some second round picks. They lose first round picks. I don't know if this is a good move for them to move up this fucking far, but the Bears absolutely killed it right here. And I know that doesn't sit well with you being in your division, because they just got way better at receiver, in my opinion. They got DJ Moore, Chase Claypool has some ability, and they got a ton of ammo and picks, and that can improve that team quite a bit.
Yeah. So the first point about that trade up from 9 to 1, we knew it was probably going to be a pretty big haul regardless. Daniel Jeremiah had come out before the trade had happened and had spoken about all these different teams that could potentially trade up to 1 and what it would take to get there according to the trade charts that are out there. They had surmised that in order for Carolina to move up, Chicago would have to send the number 1 overall and their 4th round pick this year. And again, this is to make points work in this trade chart. A 1st and a 4th round for Carolina's 1st and 2nd this year. Their 1st the next 2 years, and I believe a 3rd next year as well. So it was talking about 3 first-round picks, a 2nd round pick, and a 3rd round pick. 2nd this year, 3rd next year,
right? Which
is a gigantic haul. It's huge. And so when you look at the actual trade that happened, the 1st this year, late 2nd this year, the 1st next year, and 2nd, and DJ Moore.
Yeah.
If you look at DJ Moore as being a 1st overall pick.
So they got 1st this year, 2nd this year, 1st next year, 2nd
in
2 years from now, and DJ Moore, who is a former 1st round pick.
Mm-hmm. And so I think if you value DJ Moore as a 1st round pick, this trade compensation actually doesn't work out too bad. It is a haul for sure, but I think that according to the charts and stuff like that, it makes some sense. Now,
so the charts are tough for me because there's like 3 different charts, and everybody there's like they value different things differently. I like known commodities way more than I like draft picks.
Yeah,
but not all GMs see it that way.
That's the thing is, if you're moving up to the 1st overall pick in some years, you don't need to trade this much, because if there's not like a sure top fire quarterback, then it's not as big of a deal. But this year we have 4 guys.
Is there a generational guy? Is there a generational guy in this draft class?
For some teams, yeah. I mean,
for you, I'm asking for you, because for me, I do not see a generational guy in this draft class at any position. I see high value starters. I see some all pros maybe, but I do not see a generational guy who is going to change a franchise.
There's not anyone that I would be willing to bet my life savings on. No. Whereas in past years, like an Andrew Luck and stuff like that, you really feel that.
When Myles Garrett was coming out, I was like, that guy is generational. He is going to be one of the best pass rushers in NFL history as long as he stays healthy. Like Andrew Luck, another guy, if he can stay healthy, he was going to be generational. And everything that we saw from Andrew Luck was fucking spectacular. There are guys like that make sense. This draft, I don't see that though. I see good players.
If Bryce Young was 6'2" and
generational
a requisite weight, then yeah, we're in that talk. The height and size is the question for him, for most people, I believe. If I know I'm high on Anthony Richardson. I believe that if he hits his ceiling, he could be talked about in the Burrows and Josh Allen's and stuff like that.
If he hits the ceiling, he could be talked about with those guys, though. Not like
but that's what I'm saying. It's like if he hits that ceiling, and it is an unknown. So I'm not sure. If I were the Bears and I had really kind of fallen in love with this thought process recently, if I was the Bears, I was like, I want to trade the 1st pick to number 2.
Yeah, and I want to trade the fucking 2nd pick back to wherever.
And then trade down. And so you basically get 2 versions of trade compensation, and you probably end up with more picks overall. You probably don't get a DJ Moore out of that, but you get more picks. And like you said, it depends on the GM and the person. Do you want known commodities? Do you want picks? Things like that. I feel like Ryan Poles probably likes picks because he's a brand new GM. He wants to make his mark on this team. But if you're able to, he's still got a shitload of picks now, and you got DJ Moore, which isn't a bad thing at all. So it's a great pickup for the Bears. Me personally, NFC North, of course, I don't want the other teams to get better because I just want to be able to win. I'm still not sold on Ryan Poles and what he's going to do. Now, he's made the right steps so far. Like last year, he bit the bullet and they tanked. They got rid of good players. They received compensation for them. They have a couple core pieces around that they've figured out whether or not they want to move forward with, like Justin Fields, and they're going to be able to go from there. Now they kind of have this fresh, clean slate of, we have a shitload of picks. We have some decent, building blocks, very few, but we have a couple of building blocks, shitloads of picks, shitloads of cap space. Now I can really construct the roster that I want. Whether or not he's able to draft well, whether or not he's able to find those players, I have no idea. That, if he's able to bring him in free agency, I have no idea. We'll see. But either way, for Carolina to move up to pick 1, it makes sense to me.
Yeah,
you completely
they need to do it.
You want your number 1 overall, or you want your quarterback that you want, right? Absolutely. Do what you need to do to move up and get that guy, because you might not be, if you're doing well, you're never going to pick this high again, right? You're not going to get the opportunity to make this move. So you might as well do it now. Bite the bullet. You're going to lose compensation, but in 3 years, no one's going to give a damn that you don't have a first round pick anymore or something like that if you have a winning quarterback and a solid roster. Like if you have the quarterback taken care of, no one's going to be like, oh, poo-poo on you for trading all that stock to get a Patrick Mahomes or something like that. I'm not saying that you're going to get Pat Mahomes out of this draft, but if it works out like that, no one's going to care. All right?
Absolutely.
And if in 3 years it doesn't work out, hey, you got a whole regime change, you start over,
Yeah.
So
now,
you just need to make those moves and make it happen.
Now, the biggest loser in all of this, it's not the Panthers, in my opinion. It's not the Bears. The Bears did great, in my opinion. The Panthers did what they needed to do to go make some moves. The big loser in all of this is the fucking Indianapolis Colts.
Yes.
Then the Colts are fucked.
The Colts didn't move anywhere in the draft, and their pick got worse.
Yeah. They are going to get the third best quarterback in this draft, because Carolina's going quarterback. The Texans are definitely going quarterback. I don't think the Cardinals will go quarterback, but I could see some interesting scenarios that could play out. It won't happen, but
they'll trade the pick.
Yeah,
Cardinals need to trade the pick. For people who aren't tracking, and I told this to you earlier, Mike, earlier in the week, the Cardinals, I didn't understand how bad a shape their roster is in. They're about to trade DeAndre Hopkins probably because they need to. They need to get out of some of that money, and they need picks to get youth on this roster. They have 8 offensive linemen that are free agents. All right. That is Rodney Hudson is retired as their center, and they basically got nothing out of that guy after trading for him.
I know that is a move that I fucking lauded on this show. It's like, I love this for the Cardinals, and it did not work out.
Never played.
He
was hurt. And of those 8 guys, they are all first and second stringers. They have lost basically, if you look at a first string offensive line is 5 guys, second string is 5 guys, they've lost 8 out of their 10 starters or 8 out of their 10 first and second stringers.
Yeah.
They don't have offensive linemen right now. They don't have anyone to protect whoever decides to play quarterback for them. So
for the first 10 weeks of the season until Kyler comes back and then runs around like a toddler who stole a candy bar.
So it's like they are in a bad spot right now. So they need as many picks as possible to try to rebuild this roster.
So they're going to trade down. And then another team who needs a quarterback is going to move up in front of the fucking Colts. The Colts are in a really, really bad spot. However, we did talk, and you brought up a really good point, and I have talked myself into this being a great idea for the Colts, a great idea for the Ravens, and also a great idea for my Browns. So lay it out there for the people.
I'll say this first. The Colts could trade up to 3 to get the third best. They could do that. The Cardinals, because of what I just discussed and how much they need more picks, Colts aren't going to have to offer as much to move up to 3 as, say, a Raiders would, right? So they're going to get a lot more picks out of the Raiders if the Cardinals would do a trade with them. So that makes more sense, all right? Or a Commanders or another team. Doesn't really matter. Cardinals aren't going to trade that pick to the Colts because they're not going to get much out of it. Now, like you said, we discussed this. Lamar Jackson is out there right now. He is under a free agent tag that allows other teams to work out a deal with Lamar. If they sign an offer sheet, the Ravens are given that offer sheet and say, hey, do you want to match this? Or if you decide not to match it, which they have a week to decide, then the other team gets to sign Lamar Jackson, but the other team has to give over their next 2 first-round picks. So right now, that would be this year's first and next year's first. All right. And I think that is what makes the most sense for the Colts to do, is use this Baltimore connection. The old Baltimore Colts and now the Baltimore Colts and the Baltimore Ravens work together. Irsay needs to bite the bullet. I guess that is the word of the day, or the saying of the day for me.
Mm-hmm.
Pay Lamar this silly guaranteed money that he wants, because in 2 years it's still going to look like a good contract. In 3 years it's going to look like a fantastic contract once you get the Burrows and Herberts and those
fucking
guys.
Next year this is going to look like a great
guaranteed
contract when all those dudes are getting their money.
Deshaun Watson really fucked the system up. I can tell you that. But
listen, I hate the Deshaun Watson deal. I think it's asinine. However, it's starting to pay dividends, and not necessarily for our team, but by fucking other teams over.
Mm-hmm. So if the Colts trade their first, if we look at the 4th overall pick as a sunk cost, it's a quarterback, one way or the other, right?
Yep.
If the Colts give up that pick, they're getting a quarterback in Lamar Jackson. All right. Next year's first also has to be traded, but then you're almost looking at it as, if we don't look at this year's first round pick at all, because it's going to be a quarterback no matter what, sunk cost, you don't factor that into the value at all, then you're just valuing Lamar Jackson as a future first round pick, just one, which is way underneath his value. This guy is a guy that's been talked about as like 3 first round picks or potentially other change. So as the Colts, I'm getting a former MVP quarterback who is still young, coming off of his first deal, dynamic runner who has an arm that's never really come to fruition, and he's going to be playing for my new head coach, who just got the most out of Jalen Hurts as a running style quarterback, who also has a bit of an arm. So he fits into my system great. And we think that we have a roster that was riddled with tons of injuries last year, but before that was a pretty good roster.
Yep.
All right. You're not having to give up, as the Colts, your 2nd round pick or anything like that. You're still going to be getting the opportunity to go after like a receiver or something like that in the 2nd round, something to help you out there to give Lamar more tools. Your offense immediately jumps and becomes super dynamic. You know, Jonathan Taylor and Lamar Jackson, Michael Pittman, and maybe another receiver or a tight end out there. You've already got some solid offensive line pieces in there. They were hurt last year and didn't look good at all. But you start putting that all together, all of a sudden this offense looks pretty damn explosive and kind of scary. On the flip side, we know that Baltimore does not want to pay Lamar this fully guaranteed contract. That's why they haven't yet.
Correct. They would have locked him up last year if they wanted to pay him what he's asking for.
Absolutely. So if he's going to leave this year, you need to get quarterback help this year. And
this is a great year to fucking need it.
When else are you going to get the 4th overall pick unless your team is terrible? Right? So it gives them the 4th overall pick this year, another first next year. They are able to not have to worry about Lamar's contract. They can start paying money towards other guys, free agents and stuff like that, to build up their roster, and they can go draft their new quarterback of the future. It's a soft reset for them where they aren't having a huge, I mean, they're going to have a drop in talent until they can develop a guy, if they can develop a guy, but they're probably going to get their pick of Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, which Richardson is very much like Lamar, so the system doesn't have to be crazy different. They did just get rid of Greg Roman, have a new offensive coordinator coming in. This is an opportunity for them to change the style of offense that they're running to go to more traditional passing offense with a Will Levis if they want to. So I feel like this is a deal where if the Colts are able to come to terms with Lamar, the Ravens are going to be like, yeah, sure, let's do it, because I'm still going to get my quarterback. I'm going to get a future pick. I don't have to pay all this money. And the Colts, it works out for them because they're like, hey, we don't have to settle for the 3rd or 4th quarterback in this draft class anymore that is going to be an unknown. We get a guy right now. Yeah, we're having to pay him a lot of money, but in a couple of years, it's not going to matter. And Irsay gets to say, I'm still relevant. My team's still relevant right now. Yeah. That, to me, is the best option. The only other team that I think really should make a strong play at Lamar, New York Jets.
Yeah, but they're not going to.
I think they're in the same situation because I know we're going to get into the Rodgers stuff. I think that the whole Rodgers trade thing for them, I mean, he's just got him wrapped around his fucking finger right now, along with everyone else in the NFL. We're doing exactly what Rodgers wants, is talking about him constantly.
And I told you, I called that. I was like, there's no fucking way he comes out of his hibernation and immediately makes a decision, because as much as I like Aaron Rodgers, I know that Aaron Rodgers is a goddamn diva who likes the spotlight. And you know what people have been talking about for at least a goddamn week since he got out of his fucking darkness retreat? Aaron fucking Rodgers.
Yeah. And if we just take away names, all right, and you step back, as the Jets, you say, hey, we are a quarterback away from a playoff roster.
Yep.
Do I want to trade probably at least one first, maybe more, for a quarterback that I might get for 1 year that's a former MVP? He has a couple MVPs, but he's going to play for maybe one more year. The guy's old and he's a headache. Or do I want to trade 2 first-round picks for a guy that I'm going to have for the next 5+ years, who also
may not fit MVP. My system, though.
He might not fit the system, but we've only seen Lamar in one type of system.
That's true.
Maybe he can do something different. I don't know. To me, the reward benefit of an Aaron Rodgers on the Jets team is probably 1 year where they make it to maybe the AFC Championship game, but we know that Rodgers doesn't win the playoffs. And if they do, they'll meet the 49ers in the Super Bowl and lose. That'll be the scenario there. Or you go with Lamar Jackson and you've got a lot more leash. To me, if I'm Robert Saleh, I'm like, give me the guy that's going to extend my time here, other than just giving me 1 year and then have to blow the thing up and start this whole process again next year, because Aaron's going to be gone. And he's a whiny bitch, and he's going to be fucking making life hell in the interim. All right. Yes, they're probably going to have free agents. They're going to be like, oh, they're building a dream team here. I know they got Rodgers. They already got good pieces. I want to go there. I'll play for a little bit less. They're going to have like a really good year if Rodgers goes there. But this league isn't run on 1 year's deals, you know. You got to look to the
3-year cycles. It's 3-year cycles. That's what you get. You got to show something in 3 years. If you don't show something in 3 years, you're fucked. You're out. That's how the NFL works.
Now, and I will preface this by saying I also do not believe that Lamar will go there. I don't think that New York has their focus on him at all. That could change starting tomorrow, because Aaron Rodgers, like we said, tampering period starts tomorrow. The Jets ownership has said that they kind of want to know what Rodgers wants to do before free agency starts, which is technically the 15th. The Packers have absolutely said that as much. Rodgers has come out and said, oh, I don't want this to carry on too long. What that means, who knows? You would assume that it means, oh, I'm not going to screw teams by carrying this into free agency. But you have Mark Murphy for the Packers coming out, I believe yesterday, basically saying like, he's not our number one option. He's not our first choice. Rodgers isn't. So if Green Bay is what we've known all along, they're out on him.
Yeah.
So if he says, hey, I want to play, that's still a question. We don't know. If he says, I want to play and I only want to play for you, the Packers probably are begrudgingly going to say, okay, but that's not what they want.
No, they want to start the Jordan Love era. They have a model. They did this with Aaron. They drafted Aaron, sat his ass for a few years behind Brett, kicked Brett to the curb, to the Jets of all places. And then now they're doing the same thing. Like it's a story that's already written. We're just following the same fucking script.
I don't want Rodgers on my fucking team in 2024. This is goddamn bullshit. He does not need to be a Viking in 2 years.
He fucking might be, though.
I will quit this fucking show, Mike. We can't let this happen.
Listen, I know he's an asshole.
Bullshit.
I know he's an asshole, but he might be your asshole here pretty soon.
No.
I
don't want him.
Oh man.
I hate this.
Things are gonna get wild. I'm excited to see what the Colts do, because the Colts have to make a move now. They have to. They cannot sit and wait to see a team move up to 3. And if they do see a team move up to 3, their options become one option, and that's going out and getting Lamar.
I'll say this. The Colts probably have to really be taking a step back. It's not like they weren't evaluating all 4 quarterbacks before, all the 4 first round guys. They, of course, were evaluating them before. There's been a lot of talks of them moving up to 1 and still taking a Levis, who's a guy that I think that will be available at 3 or 4. So if they're comfortable with that, or if they're comfortable with both Levis and Richardson and maybe Stroud, then maybe you do sit at 4 and you just take that. It sucks to sit back and just take the scraps, but if you like those guys and you're going to take them anyways, then it doesn't necessarily hurt to sit there and wait for them. I don't want Colts fans, I don't want Sexy Torres to be listening to this and being like, oh, my Colts are fucked unless we trade for Lamar or something like that. Are they more fucked today than they were 48 hours ago? Yes.
Yeah.
But they don't have to be. You still have options. You can still go out and get Lamar and feel real damn good about that. And for me, if I was a Colts fan, I'd be like, okay, if I sit back at 4 and I get Levis, the guy that I wanted originally, even if he doesn't like milk, we can ban that in the state of Indiana. And if I get AR 15, I mean, Richardson's my favorite quarterback in the draft right now. So I'm also happy there. I'm not happy that I have to play him right away.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to get him. So it's not all doom and gloom for the Colts. It's just not as good of a situation as it was 48 hours ago. If you want to look at the, hunt the good stuff, as we learned from Army MRT training here, you're not having to trade a boatload of stuff to get up to pick number 1 anymore. So you have more picks than you thought you were going to have come draft day.
Yeah, hunt the good stuff. That's another way of saying embrace the suck without saying that it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a fancy term that the Army decided to use because they got tired of hearing everybody say just embrace the suck. This is gonna fucking blow. This is gonna fucking blow, so let's just deal with it. Well, we'll hunt the good stuff. And that's exactly where the Colts are at right now. They gotta hunt the good stuff. But with that, let's transition over into some free agents. And since we were just talking quarterback, let's continue to talk quarterbacks on the free agent market, because there are some guys that are starting to generate some fucking buzz. And I don't know that I expected it. Now, we already saw one domino fall with Derek Carr, but there are some other interesting names out there.
We've seen a little bit, right? So the main 3 guys, Derek Carr, he was released, so he got to sign early. You've got the Lamar Jackson news where they're trying to figure stuff out with him. Worst case, he plays on the franchise tag for the Ravens, which, I mean, maybe he decides to sit out. We'll see what his agent / mother wants to do, which I know NFL execs are not happy with him for that. They're like, hey, bring an agent so we have someone to actually talk to about this. If he had an agent right now, by the way, he'd have a deal.
Maybe he'd have a deal.
Yeah. He'd have a deal, or he'd already been traded, because that agent's going to get him a deal with another team, and the Ravens will take a haul bigger than 2 first-round picks, but neither here nor there. You also have Geno Smith. Geno came out and signed a contract, got his bag.
Good
so those
for,
are the
dude,
3
I'm pumped
main
for Geno, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, good for Geno. Way to bounce back fucking and just really cash in late in your career. Listen, you can make a great career in the NFL being a backup. Geno's had a good career as a backup. He finally showed out this year, and he got paid for it. Good for Geno. I'm pumped for Geno. And I was not a Geno believer.
Mm-hmm. And those are your 3 main guys that are kind of getting talked about as like potential true NFL starting quarterbacks for the long term. And then that leaves us with the rest and a bunch of teams who still need guys. So you've got Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield technically, and then you have,
Baker Mayfield is a free agent.
Teddy Bridgewater, Gardner Minshew, Mariota. Are very well could see Tannehill released here pretty soon.
Yeah.
He's expected to possibly be going. And then a lot of your backup guys, your Andy Daltons, Taylor Heineke is going to be a free agent. I would assume that Washington's going to go out there and resign him, which now, okay, I know we're jumping back into the Lamar thing.
Okay.
But
right,
this is one thing that I've also heard. Think about the biggest fuck you that Dan Snyder could do. I'm going to pay Lamar not just the Deshaun Watson contract.
I'm going to pay him fucking more and then sell this bitch.
Exactly. And oh, by the way, new owner, this is your new bill. The biggest fuck you I can do to the league. Oh, league doesn't want guaranteed contracts? Cool. I'm going to double the guaranteed contract, make it ginormous on this team, and sell it. So now you all have a new precedent. Enjoy signing your fucking quarterbacks going forward. Fuck you, NFL. I'm Dan Snyder. That would be the biggest fuck you move.
Fuck you, I'm out. Like, just
Because
mic drop, just...
If Lamar signs the offer sheet, it's out of the Ravens' hands. They have to say, yes, we're going to match it, or no, we're going to trade it. They can't match a stupid fucking deal like that from Dan Snyder. That's the biggest fuck you move that Dan Snyder could do. And it would be amazing and hilarious, and I would hate it.
It would be electric, dude. That would be fucking electric.
Because how do you reset the quarterback market after that?
You don't.
Can't. I think most people look at the Deshaun Watson contract and say, this should have never happened. GMs, at least, this sort of money never should have happened. But it is close enough to quarterback contracts in today's day and age that people are going to be like, okay, this is now reset the market. But if you make that big of a jump, I don't know how anyone can be like, yes, this is reasonable now going forward. Yeah. You can't. So Dan,
I had not thought about Dan.
Everybody over.
Yeah,
I thought about this early in the week of like your doomsday clock scenario, and we are quarter to midnight if Dan Snyder decides to drop that bomb. Because if you the guaranteed money that comes out of the owner's pocket, right? Yeah, it goes into that escrow. That escrow transfers. I looked at it.
Yeah, You better come with a fucking boatload of cash if you're buying this goddamn team.
You can't have it unless you want to pay this quarterback half a
billion fucking dollars.
This is a great idea, right?
Bezos, now you can put in your goddamn bid.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen, but man, it's a big fuck you.
All right, so let's talk about
how many old white men would be crying.
Oh,
upset.
You'll see Americans around the country will rejoice. And it will be the only time they have ever cheered for Dan Snyder, watching all of these white billionaires just like, oh, man, why did you have to do that?
I think Dan Snyder is a good PR move. I'm signing a black guy, and I've got all this bad press. I'm giving him, huge amounts of fuck you money. And also, it's fuck you to everyone else.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone should applaud Dan Snyder, but that would be the one golf clap that he'd get from me. All right. Fair enough.
All right. So let's talk about some of these guys who are currently free agents. The guy I'm going to bring up, a guy near and dear to my heart. I still root for this guy to do well, and it's Baker Mayfield. There are reports coming out that he is getting looked at to be re-signed by the Rams. Also, Tampa is in on Baker Mayfield, apparently. Tampa wants to bring him down and compete with Kyle Trask. I'm not sure Kyle Trask is going to be a guy down there, but I could see Baker Mayfield fitting in down there. I also see the Rams wanting to bring him back with the uncertainty of what's going to go on with Stafford, because he is still banged up. He's old in his career. You can allow him to learn, stay in that system, and kind of prosper, in my opinion, because he showed out pretty well. So I think Baker staying there makes sense, but Baker is going to want to know he's got a chance to compete for a chance to be the starter in Tampa. Makes a lot of sense. Now, following in Tom Brady's footsteps is not necessarily the greatest situation to step into, but I think Baker would embrace that because that's just the way Baker is. He's a brash kind of guy. He's going to say, fuck it, I'm taking this head on, even if he's maybe not equipped for that.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation there. They got rid of Byron Leftwich for better or worse this year, and they brought in offensive coordinator Dave Canales. I don't know if I'm saying the name correctly or not. Looks like he spent the last 13 seasons as an assistant coach with the Seahawks. I don't know how I feel about that. I think with Baker, it's a system thing. Obviously, we saw some of the potential of Baker there in Cleveland, and it didn't work out for XYZ reasons. You go to Carolina, it definitely doesn't work out. But then you bring him down to a very, very competent offensive run team and McVay, and he shows really what his potential is if you can unlock that. So I think if he goes to the right system, you are going to get an average to above average quarterback play from, at its peak. I don't know if that'll be the case with the Buccaneers, because I honestly don't know anything about this new offensive coordinator. They're an aging team. They're another team that has cap issues. They're going to have to really start to rebuild there. So it would be an interesting situation to see him go down there. They're expecting him to get something like a 2-year, almost $7 million per year average, according to PFF, which feels a little bit low to me.
It doesn't feel a little bit low. That's backup money.
Even good backups get paid, 10 plus. So $7 million a year on 2 years. I mean, I could see a 1 year prove it at that point. Cam did the 1 year prove it at $8 million for the Patriots. I still feel like he probably would deserve a little bit more than that. So maybe PFF is a little low on it, but I also could see LA bringing him back for that, where he would go back to LA for that, because that's like, until Stafford does something different. Stafford has said he's going to play this year. His wife doesn't want him to, but he said he's going to play. There's been some rumors of them trying to trade Stafford. I don't know that anyone's going to really bite on that. Wow. So, I mean, if you stay with LA, you know that you are in a backup spot, and you don't really get that chance to prove yourself. I don't know. It's an interesting situation with Baker.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see how that one shakes out. But another guy that I know is going somewhere else has proven to be a winner, not necessarily a great quarterback, but a winner in the league, Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy is not going back to the 49ers. We have got to imagine a world where Trey Lance is going to be the starter, even though I don't think that they are now convinced that Trey Lance is their starter, because they saw what Brock Purdy can do. And I think they really like what Brock Purdy can do in that system. But Jimmy is going to go somewhere else. But where the fuck does Jimmy fit now? Because Jimmy is not going to go to the Jets unless the Aaron Rodgers thing completely falls through. Tampa, I think, is maybe an option, but they're kind of in on Baker right now. Seahawks re-sign Geno. Where's the landing spot for Jimmy? Because Jimmy is a winner. Now, listen, that's the most important stat in the NFL, is winning. That's all it is. Do I need Jimmy to throw for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns? No, because if I have a team that's built around him the way Jimmy always has, Jimmy is very capable. Jimmy can get you to a Super Bowl and damn near win you one. Like, he had a chance to fucking win that game.
I think the situation that makes the most sense to me is the Raiders. This is former offensive coach there. There's already weapons in place there. They have Jarrett Stidham, who they feel good about, who Jimmy is. I don't remember if he's familiar with Stidham or not. I don't remember if Stidham
came from the same system. Stidham was not there when Jimmy was there.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, is that the same system, same coach. They kind of know what's going on there. So the only question is, are the Raiders going to be able to move into a position to get one of those top 4 quarterbacks in the draft? And if they do they want to sit them? Assuming it's going to be Levis or Richardson, yeah, you want to sit the guy. Yep. Stidham, I don't feel great about going in as my starter this year. No matter what the Raiders say and no matter how good he looked at the end of the year, you just can't trust that.
No, and you saw the hype in Stidham in New England for a year. Like, oh, this is going to be our guy. Very clearly wasn't the guy, and then
that's why they went and brought in Cam. They brought in Cam immediately. So Jimmy, to me, makes sense. He comes in, can run the system easy, and he's a proven winner. He just doesn't stay healthy. All right. So that if he gets hurt, you do have Stidham to still roll with. And if you bring in a Levis or Richardson, none of those guys has to start day one. Theoretically, you should be able to get through the entire season with Jimmy and Stidham. Jimmy on a 1-year deal and Stidham on whatever deal he's on. And then next year you roll on to this future franchise quarterback. To me, that's the place that makes the most sense. You could see, I guess, Jimmy go to Tampa, but it's like, is he going to follow Brady wherever he was type thing? I don't know if I necessarily see that. Although Jimmy does seem like he would be a Tampa, Florida type of guy. Like he would, love the ladies down there and stuff like that. I don't know.
No, don't get me wrong. Like, Jimmy in New York makes a ton of sense to me. Good looking Italian kid fucking in Jersey. Like, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And it would do exactly what Salah needs him to do, which is fucking just take care of the goddamn ball, not turn it over. I don't need you to win. I just need you to not fuck me over. So that is a fit if the Aaron Rodgers things falls through.
I mean, Saleh knows what Jimmy can do from his time in San Fran. He knows what type of, quarterback he can be. Nothing spectacular, but he can run offense for you while he's healthy and get you wins.
Yeah. So that's the only other place that I see that's possible. But they're so far entrenched on this Aaron Rodgers thing that's going to have to be a secondary backup. That's definitely a tertiary plan. That's not their A1. So
you brought up that stuff with the NFC North and how I feel about the Bears getting all these picks. My focus is completely on what happens with this Packers thing, because if Rodgers ends up deciding to play, and if he decides that he wants to get traded to the Jets and takes that deal, I don't want to see the compensation that the Packers get back. That's what I don't want to see, because this will be the fucking first year where they go in the first round with probably 2 first-round picks within 5 picks of each other and take a Dalton Kincaid, who's your top-end receiving tight end, and possibly a receiver like Jackson Smith and Jigba or something like that. And all of a sudden, you've got tons of offensive weapons out there between Dobbs, Watson, a new tight end, a new wide receiver, and Jordan Love, who I don't know that is going to be anything great, but it's kind of tough to be bad when you got that many options.
Well, and talk about a fuck you to Aaron Rodgers. Hey, by the way, you're done here. We're going to trade you to the Jets. Also, by the way, we're going to take 2 offensive weapons in the first round.
Mm-hmm. And they all of a sudden get a whole bunch more capper.
Like, you as a Vikings fan would have to love the just fuck you to Rodgers there at the end.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, like I'm just going to have 2 things to root against. I'm going to root against the Jets hardcore, specifically Rodgers, and I'm going to root against the Packers still. I just think the best fuck you would be for Rodgers to come out tomorrow and say he's retiring.
Well, that would make you the happiest, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because then I can be happy for the Jets, because I do like the way that this team has kind of pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and become a pretty solid fucking team under a coach that I really like. I love all the things that the Jets are doing, except for this Rodgers situation. I get it. You want a quarterback and you need a quarterback, but not the guy, in my opinion, because it's just a short-term thing. And for the Packers to just get no compensation back for him would feel great for me.
Right. So I'm going to talk about another guy, quarterback-wise, that also
another former Brown,
near and dear to my heart, who also I think fits with the Jets if Aaron Rodgers falls through and they decide they don't want to go in the Jimmy Garoppolo direction. Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett has played his way last year into a really good contract this year. I don't know if he played himself into a starter's role, but he played himself into a competing for a starter's role in camp. I could see a fit there with the Jets. If they don't want to go with Jimmy, they could go with a Jacoby. Very similar skill set. I think you could probably actually get Jacoby for less money than you could get Jimmy Garoppolo as well.
Oh yeah.
And
they're talking. The PFS got him $8 million a year average for probably like a 2-year contract. Again, I could see that up higher, closer to a 10 based on what he did last year. Jimmy, they're looking at 15 a year.
Right. So you can save some cap space. You can bring in a guy who does similar things. And Jacoby, to me, really fits with what that team wants to do. Jacoby will go out there and run your offense. That's all he'll do. He'll run your offense.
Does Jacoby excite you, though?
No, he doesn't excite me. Not at all.
I mean, even in comparison to Jimmy, he doesn't excite me.
Okay, so if I had to pick between Jacoby and Jimmy, I actually think I would take Jacoby based on some of the things that I have seen over this last year. Because Jacoby, for his flaws, is very capable of running plays on schedule. What the Jets really struggled with was the ability to run plays on schedule because their quarterback was perpetually late with the ball, unless you're talking about a Mike White. So Jacoby in that offense could do exactly what you need, nothing special, and save you some cap space against Garoppolo. I think that is a fit. I believe Jacoby will get a good deal to go somewhere and possibly compete for a starter spot. I would also be interested to see what the Titans do with Tannehill, and if they would bring in Jacoby on a bridge quarterback deal to go out and maybe be a mentor for a Malik Willis or somebody else that they may go and approach, not this year, but next year.
You want to know where I think Jacoby fits best? The Panthers.
Oh man,
Frank Reich knows Jacoby.
Yeah,
Jacoby knows the system. They're gonna go out and take a first overall quarterback, right?
Yep.
Who better to kind of bring him along? And I'm assuming at this point, my gut tells me that CJ Stroud is going to be the guy there. Jacoby seems like a great mentor for CJ. Jacoby's over 30 years old now. He can keep on playing as a quarterback, but theoretically, you bring Jacoby in on a 2-year deal, mentor this new, fresh, young quarterback on how to be a pro, how to run this offense, make them best buds. The Stroud doesn't have to worry about Jacoby coming and taking his job, but if something happens, he gets hurt, you feel really good about Jacoby jumping in and running your system. Frank probably knows him, loves him from his time there in Indy. No. Yes, Jacoby is now saying, yeah, I'm not going to start in this league anymore, but he should be real with himself. He's not a starter in this league. He's a bridge guy at best.
Yep.
So why not go to a
he's in that
system?
Teddy Bridgewater fucking territory right now.
Yeah. Go to a system that you're comfortable with, a coach you're comfortable with, and you've got a pretty cool role carved out for you there. To me, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about? There's only one guy that I wanted to talk about briefly. If
Gardner Minshew.
Okay, you want to talk about? All right, let's talk about Gardner. That is not the guy I was going to bring up. I was going to bring up Mike White.
My boy Gardner, your boy Gardner.
I love Gardner
this year.
Fucking love Gardner, man.
He's a free agent. They're looking at a 1-year, $3.5 million deal average here for Gardner, according to PFF. I could see that $3 or $4 million a year to come play that backup role with all that fucking swagger. The Vikings need a backup quarterback. Just bring him in. I love it.
I think Gardner's going to go look for an opportunity to possibly compete.
He could. That's the type of guy that I see going to like a Titans or something like that.
Tampa. He fits so well in that Tampa offense, man.
He does. I mean, he fit with the Jags.
Give me, if you listen, Tampa, you want to go after Baker. I think Baker maybe has a little bit more upside, but Baker and Gardner are so fucking similar in some of the things that they can do. I really like Gardner for $3.5 million, especially with the cap that has been perpetually fucked around with down there in Tampa. Gardner down there in Tampa makes a ton of sense to me.
It does.
And it gives him a chance to go and compete against a Kyle Trask. I'm going to expect Gardner to be starting week 1.
Don't get me wrong. That makes sense. Me just being a Vikings fan and the
you
way
want
that we're
Gardner,
going about this,
you want that fucking flow on the team, baby.
I've wanted him on my team forever now. Yeah. But the thing is that looking at all these moves that the Vikings, the bloodbath that is our offseason of getting rid of veterans and stuff like that, Kirk recently has been on a couple shows and talked about how him and his wife had very emotional conversations where she's crying because of how this offseason is changing the team and their future. This is Kirk's last year on his deal right now. And the talks earlier was either they're going to let this deal ride out or sign him to a long-term extension. No more than 1 or 2 year things.
Don't fucking sign Kirk to a big deal.
Absolutely. That's what the team's doing. Kwesi is a finance guy from Wall Street. He's looking at him as a stock. This is a stock of a quarterback that's going to be 36 years old, puts up good stats, never wins you championships, and commands way too much salary cap for what you're getting out of him. When you can go for a younger asset that might be able to boost you up above the limit and give you more money to play with for the rest of your team that you are essentially in a soft rebuild on, especially on defense. Getting rid of Eric Kendricks, possibly Zadarius Smith, who's asked for a release, possibly Harrison Smith, who I really don't want to see go. I hope they can work something out with him. Either way, Kirk's last year. Sign Gardner to a 3-year deal. Let him come and be the backup. Kirk leaves next year. I feel comfortable with Gardner having to start if need be, and then go after your rookie quarterback. this year, I still want to see us package in a massive deal to move up to try to get a quarterback. It's just not going to happen with the way things are playing out right now.
Well, no, with the Panthers moving up the way they did, there's no chance you got anybody is falling to you guys at this point. You're gonna have to move up to fucking top 6 to go get a quarterback now.
Oh no, 3. I like if the Vikings want to go get their quarterback this year, if they like a Richardson or something like that, they have to trade up with the Cardinals to 3, and they're giving up a lot, and I'm willing to do it. But they're giving up a fucking lot. All right. And that's the only way that works out is if we go get a quarterback this year, is if we move up to 3 and then you let Kirk play out this last year and the guy that needs to sit, a Levis or Richardson, gets to sit for that year. But if not, you have to do the same thing next year. All right. We have to find a new young quarterback next year. And who better to bridge than my boy Gardner? That's what I would love to see. All right. This is kind of getting into the nitty-gritty a little bit too, I guess. There's been a lot of talks amongst Minnesota sports fans and sports shows. Kyle Shanahan absolutely loves Kirk Cousins from their time in Washington.
Right.
They've come out in pressers talking about how much he loves him, even when he's been with the 49ers. Kirk has a no-trade clause, but I think that he would be willing to trade that no-trade or get rid of that no-trade clause if we say we're not signing you to a long-term deal anymore, and Shanahan, and then we're able to say, yeah, we'll come get you and sign you to like a 3-4 year deal.
They're not going. They're going to play Brock Purdy. They're going to play Brock Purdy when Brock Purdy's healthy. As soon as he's healthy, they're going to fucking eat the goddamn giant shit sandwich that they have created by going out and giving up a ton of picks for Trey Lance. And then as soon as Brock Purdy is healthy, there will be a competition between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. Brock Purdy will win that competition.
Purdy's not going to be able to play for a while. They're talking September at the earliest that he could start.
But there's no way they're going to give up additional assets at the quarterback spot when they gave up so much to go get Trey Lance, who was the wrong fucking pick. But
the scuttlebutt is that 49ers send Trey Lance and next year's first.
Okay, so now there's a conversation because that gives you a young quarterback that maybe you can groom. I am not a Trey Lance guy.
I am not either. But apparently through the draft process, Kwesi apparently has said that he actually likes stuff with Trey Lance. I don't know why. Either way, Trey Lance is now your cheap bridge that has some upside maybe under Kevin O'Connell. You get Kirk's contract off your books. And yes, Brock Purdy is a good asset for the 49ers. And I think that he could definitely be a long-term solution there for him. But I guess you don't really know because he was a late-round pick and he happened to do really good on a really good team. But maybe that was just a flash in the pan. You know what Kirk Cousins is. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's known for signing these 3-year deals. So you're not stuck with Kirk forever. You can move on to Purdy if you need to. It's a guy that you like in your system. So, yeah, take Cousins. My team, not going to be great this year, but we now have the trade capital with that next year's first-round pick to start packaging a lot of firsts to move up in a draft to get a guy.
Okay. I see where your head's at. I just don't know that it'll happen. I don't know that will happen.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen, but I would love it.
Yeah. All right, so last guy, real quick on the quarterbacks before we move on. Mike White. Mike White has played himself into a contract with a team. I don't think he will even have an opportunity to go in and compete for a starting job, though, which kind of stinks because I like Mike White. I like the energy he brings, and I love the way that guys compete around him. Mike White and Tyler Heineke, to me, are virtually the same fucking guy, but I like Mike White's arm a little bit better than I like Tyler Heineke's. They get the best out of their team. I just don't know that there's a spot for Mike White, especially if the Jets go out and get an Aaron Rodgers. If they don't go out and get an Aaron Rodgers, I think the Jets re-sign Mike White as long as Mike White understands and knows that he has an opportunity to actually win that fucking job from Zach Wilson, because he has been belabored behind Zach Wilson, knowing that he is a better fucking quarterback, but Zach's draft position has kept him above Mike White.
Sure. You think that Heineke ends up just going back to Washington?
Yeah, he goes back there on a backup deal, $3-4 million. He takes the money. He's very grateful. He enjoys the organization. The organization gave him a shot. I hope Tyler goes back there because he's good for that team. Those guys know how to rally. And honestly, Tyler Heineke can be a guy who can mentor somebody else coming into the league who's young in the league, who knows how that team operates. He's dealt with all the bullshit that goes on there and still finds a way to get the best out of his guys. I hope Tyler does go back to the Commanders. If he doesn't, I hope somebody else gives him a shot because the kid can play. He's a backup. He's an exciting backup. He's a fun fucking story. A guy living on his sister's couch comes in, makes good on an NFL contract, starts in the NFL. Who doesn't love that fucking story? But he's not a starter. I love Heineke.
Look, he can come back home to my Vikings. We're the ones that brought him into the league. We'll take him back.
So if you don't get Gardner, you're all in on bringing in Heineke for a backup?
Gardner's my number one. He's my North Star. Fuck drafting a quarterback. Just bring in Gardner, man.
There you go.
Let him take this chariot to the promised land.
Let's move on to another position group, running back. It's an interesting group because there are some names out there that guys know, that people know, but I also think there's a lot of guys who people know that are well past their prime. So Denver cuts Chase Edmonds. He's available. Kareem Hunt is available via just outright free agency. Rashad Penny available. Jamal Williams, who had a fucking monster year getting in the end zone last year, he's available. But are we going to see any like big time running back movement outside of Kareem Hunt? I think that's the only guy people are like, okay, this guy really makes us better. Whereas some of these other guys, and I love Jamal Williams. I don't know if you bring in a Jamal Williams to be like, hey, I need you to come in and be the running back for my team. I know you scored 17 fucking touchdowns last year, but I just need you to come in and be a piece.
I don't want to disparage Kareem Hunt at all because I love him. And honestly, with my running back situation in Minnesota, he's the guy that I really want us to look at bringing in if the money's right. I don't think that in this running back class of free agents that there is a true starter, like a true number one type of guy.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are B guys or
I could see 1Bs. Kareem Hunt is a 1B. I think because he played a 1B role here in Cleveland. Jamal Williams, I see as a 1B. And honestly, I love the idea of Jamal Williams. And I hate saying this because I fucking hate the Patriots, but Jamal Williams with the Patriots makes a lot of sense, but they just they have so many guys there already.
Ramondre and stuff like that. I like the type of player that he is for sure. But I mean, so we got, Miles Sanders is technically a free agent. David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, Jamal Williams, Donta Foreman, which I expect Deonta to go back to Carolina. There's already been talks there. Like I said, Kareem Hunt, Damian Harris, Jerick McKinnon, Jeff Wilson. You're hearing a lot of these guys.
McKinnon is going back to fucking Kansas City.
He's probably
he's going back.
Rashad Penny, Alex Madison, my guy, like Raheem Mostert. These are a lot of guys that you hear as part of platoons. Good names, part of platoons. So they're not going to command big money. These guys are all like max for the best of them, $5 million a year. And I don't expect that to happen.
And the only guy I think could get $5 million would be Kareem Hunt because he's been a league leader in rushing.
And
that's the only guy I could see getting that.
PFF doesn't even have him at that.
Yeah.
They got him as a $4 million a year guy. And I think, yes, he's a good rusher, but he's an extremely good receiver too. That's why I would like to bring him in. The thing for the Vikings is that we saw the Dalvin Cook situation to deal with. He's getting paid too much money for what he does to, 14 something million a year. There is a trade offer on the table, apparently. That was reported this week by Doogie Wills, Doogie. I don't remember. Wolfson,
Hauser.
Doogie Wolfson.
I'm going with Hauser. Hauser.
Doogie Wolfson. He's a Vikings and Minnesota sports beat reporter. He said his sources have told him that there is one offer on the table for him, that the Vikings don't have plans on moving him right now. I'm sure it is a low round pick. I'm still fine with it. I don't want to see Dalvin go because I like Dalvin as a player, but he's not what he used to be. He is at 28 years old, which means
he's right at the edge of
and he's owed a lot of money, not just this year, but the next 2 years. So if we can move him, he's already said he's not going to take a pay cut. Either you got to cut him, or best case is you trade him, even if it's for a 5th or 6th round pick. I don't really care. And then if you were to bring in someone like a Kareem Hunt, we've already got a Ty Chandler who they really like as another piece running back. You don't have any true number one type of guy, though I feel really good about Kareem being the top guy on our depth chart. And you bring in a rookie, and now you've got a platoon system, kind of like what KC has, and you feel good about it. So I would love that.
We did here in Cleveland. We had a guy who just ran the fucking ball in Nick Chubb and does it exceptionally. And then we have a guy in Kareem Hunt goes out there and can do some extra things, catches the ball out of the backfield, can line up at a fucking H spot, can do a lot of different things. So it does make sense to me, but there's just not a name on here. It's like, this guy is going to get fucking paid, and this is the team he needs to go to. We were slamming the table all year that the Bills need to go out and get a Kareem Hunt, because I wanted the draft capital for one, and that made them incredibly dangerous. But they don't do it in the middle of the season. I don't know that they're going to pay him right now, because I think they're pretty set. They started to like some of the things that they saw at the end of the year. So these guys are going to get deals, but there's not going to be any big deals. And the only guy I think that really is going to pop up and be like, hey, this guy is going to be a big time starter on my team is Kareem Hunt. The only other guy could be a Jamal Williams, who you saw what he can do with a hard-nosed fucking coach in Dan Campbell. But I like the idea of bringing Jamal Williams back to a Lions and allowing him to continue to help set the culture for that team, because that's exactly what Jamal Williams is in your locker room. He's a culture setter.
Yeah. It's a tough situation to be in if you're a running back, because realistically, you've got a lot of guys that are not that far off from you. If you're a running back, like the market is all about the same money, all roughly the same talent, either here or there. Just depends on how a team views you. You have talks of Derrick Henry being on the trade block. Dalvin's obviously on the trade block.
I think that's posturing.
There's Mixon, the talk, like we said with Mixon, where he could potentially be a cut. And on top of that, this is a really good running back draft, especially in the middle rounds. So teams might just be like, well, I could pay you $4 million to come in here and play for me, or I could pay this guy $1 million, maybe get the same out of you. But before we move on too much, some breaking news that I just saw here from Ian Rappaport.
Ooh.
The Rams are finalizing a trade. It is not done yet.
Oh, no fucking way. I just see it right now.
To trade Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins.
That is a weird fucking move, but okay.
All right. So it sounds like Vic Fangio down there in Miami,
Hunter Long,
is wanting to trade Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins.
Yeah, for a 3rd round pick and Hunter Long. I apologize, man. I don't know the name, but a 3rd round pick and Hunter Long.
It's a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not a good tight end, and it's a tight end that, well, and we're talking about a Dolphins team that also, we're going to talk about free agent tight ends. Mike Gesicki is a available tight end who was on that Dolphins team. Now they're trading a tight end. I mean, it's good because Byron Jones is done, so they bring in a Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, Byron Jones has already been released.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it's good. You don't give up a ton. Jalen Ramsey's production drastically dropped, but that's an interesting move there by the Finns to go out and get a Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, it is interesting. So Hunter Long drafted 2021 as a 3rd round pick. He has a total of 1 reception for 8 yards in the NFL so far.
Okay, so Hunter, don't get me wrong. If you ever see this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I didn't know who you were. Congratulations on going to a squad with an offensive guru. That's good for you. So
that it really feels like a weird throw in. Like, okay,
I don't.
But like, give me something else, please. I was like, fucking
Hunter Long, you're out.
Third string tight end, I guess. Like, sure, I don't know. Fuck it. All right, but either way, Jalen Ramsey on the move now. According to Rappaport and Adam Schefter, like you said, Dolphins get that cornerback in Ramsey and then a 3rd round pick in Hunter Long. headed
It's
over.
good. It's good for the Dolphins because they lose Byron Jones. They only have to give up a 3rd-round pick. You get a guy who's a perennial All-Pro, but is falling off at the tail end of his career. He can possibly be very productive for you. I don't think Jalen Ramsey is still the same guy, but in that division, he's only going to face up against what? Stephon Diggs, who absolutely cooked him. But that's probably your toughest matchup. I mean, there's no Jacoby Myers anymore. We're not talking about. I mean, now he doesn't have to cover Tyreek, so he's on the same team. And then the Jets, you got Garrett Wilson, who is very good at wide receiver. But I think Jalen can still probably hang with him a little bit just because he's so much bigger and physical than Garrett Wilson's going to be. It makes sense, I guess.
Hey, Ramsey knows Florida.
Yeah, very, very familiar with the area.
Likes it. So, I think he was ready to move on too. So,
yeah,
the Rams get some trade capital back and some salary relief. So, I mean, it works out for them, I suppose, in the long run. By the way, breaking news from the Lineman Lounge.
There we go.
There you go. Some trades. All right. Anything else you want to go over here with your running backs?
Not on the running backs. I'm ready to move on to receiver, and I think this is going to be fairly quick because there are not a lot of names on this list that I love.
Yeah, not a good receiver grouping for free agents this year.
Yeah, so Robert Woods is the one signee. Robert Woods had a fucking terrible year with Tennessee. He's now in Houston.
And I don't think that's his fault. He still was a good receiver there for Tennessee.
Yeah, not his fault.
It's a bad year for Robert Woods because you're going to no quarterback play there.
Yeah. So Robert Woods gets a deal, goes to Houston. I think that move to Houston opens up trade possibilities of Brandon Cooks, which all Browns fans are very much entrenched in finding out what is going to happen with Brandon Cooks. He's been dying to get out of there. Browns fans are clamoring for a reunion between Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks. And we also need the guy who can take the top off of a defense. So that makes sense. So Robert Woods going there works for me. But I'm looking at this other list and I'm seeing these guys, and I'm a Browns fan who needs a guy who can take the top off the defense. And I don't have one. I mean, I got Adam Thielen, not that guy.
DJ Shark. He's the only.
So that is
speedster.
the only guy. That is the only guy, and that's the only guy I would even consider bringing in off this list if I'm a Browns fan. I know people are like, "Oh, well, Adam Thielen has rapport with our head coach, yeah, like with Stefanski." It doesn't fit. That's not what we need. What we need is a guy who's.
To be honest with Thielen, I'm pretty sure that if Rodgers goes to the Jets, him and Rodgers are friends, that he's going to want to go there. He's going to championship hunt right now. He's only going to go to a team. He'll go to a team on a cheaper deal because the Vikings are still paying him money, unfortunately. He's going to go to a team that has a championship possibility. So Chiefs, if they don't re-sign Juju, Jets, if they sign Rodgers. I don't know that he goes to the Bills, but it'd be interesting to see him in a reunion with Stephon Diggs, take that Cole Beasley role away. But one of those situations I feel is like where Adam's going to go. He'll go for a little bit less money than maybe what's expected. But if he has his choice, I don't know that he's going to go and play somewhere outdoors cold where he could see more injuries happening.
All right. So, yeah, for me as a Browns fan, the only guy I'm looking at on this list is DJ Chark. And DJ Chark has the ability to do some really cool things, but also DJ Chark has, I'm not sure, lived up to the potential of what was expected after a monster year in Jacksonville one year. Yeah. But I look at down this list. I don't want Meta World Peace. I'm sorry. I mean, Robbie Anderson.
What the fuck is his name now?
I don't fucking
Chosen Anderson.
Chosen Anderson.
You've been chosen to not be very good at the NFL.
So I don't want Robbie Anderson. I don't want Nelson Aguilar. I don't need a Sterling Shepard. Definitely out on Randall Cobb. Marvin Jones, you're past your prime. Julio Jones, I'm out. Byron and Pringle.
Not taking
Alan
the top
Lazard,
off of thing. Alan Lazard.
Maybe.
I would feel good about Alan Lazard. He's a good possession guy.
Yeah. Now, Jacoby Myers could be somebody that I could get behind, but I just don't know that if it fits with what the Browns really want to do with their wide receiver core. Because we have a really good route runner in Amari Cooper. We have a guy who I think is still ascending in a Donovan Peoples-Jones, who is actually not a bad deep threat. Like, has a really good jump ball abilities, can win 50-50 balls. So, like, if I'm looking for just a straight speedster, DJ Chark, but I mean, I have Nelson Aguilar, but I want somebody who knows how to catch the fucking ball. So this is not a great receiver class.
Chark is intriguing for that deep ball. So his average depth of target, I believe, is over 18 yards. So he's known for going for that deeper ball. But that he is a lot more your one-trick pony. So for the price that you're going to end up having to pay him, they're expecting somewhere in the $12 million a year range.
I'm not sure it's worth it.
I'm not on that personally.
Yeah.
Look, if the Vikings were to go out and get him, because that's been a name that's been floated as well, we have Jefferson, who is good in the underneath intermediate. He's good at everything, right? But he's not necessarily known for being like a deep ball guy. You've got Hawkinson, who's going to be working the middle of the field really well. He's our number 2 receiver right now, with KJ, the hero Osborne, pulling people out of fucking car crashes apparently out there in Austin, Texas.
What a wild thing, man. Good for him.
The one thing that we're missing is a true downfield, deep, long speed threat receiver. DJ Chark would fill that role. I still would rather go through the draft or something like that for one of these guys, because none of these wide receivers excite me other than as one-trick ponies, and they're getting paid too much to be the one-trick pony sort of thing. So, yeah, for me, I'd be looking towards draft.
Yeah, agreed. So, with that, we'll move on to another position group, tight end, who is actually
not fullbacks.
No, we're not going to fucking fullbacks. We're not doing fucking fullbacks.
I'm joking.
Because there's like 4 teams in the NFL that still have one.
Yeah,
and they all run the exact same system.
And the Vikings have one. We should get rid of them. I'm not going to. Yeah. I love CJ Ham, but I want to get rid of him.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the tight ends, because there are some pretty interesting names in here. Mike Gesicki, I brought him up earlier, is available. He played well when he was on the field. Just, I don't know that he is a guy that I'm like, oh, I want to go get a Mike Gesicki. A guy that I do really like out of this tight end group, though, is Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz was a do-everything tight end for that Cowboys team, and I'm surprised, able to make it to free agency, because the fucking Cowboys need more weapons, and he's available. I mean, Austin Hooper, I'm not in love with anymore. I mean, I was excited when we got him, but I saw the error of my ways. Robert Tonyan, also a guy that could be valuable. Maybe, but like, I think that Dalton Schultz getting to free agency is surprising to me, that Jerry doesn't get that deal done.
The word is that, and they haven't spoken the numbers, but the latest I saw on Dalton Schultz was they offered him a very good deal. That's all that the reports are saying, is that very good long-term deal has been offered to Dalton Schultz, and he's decided to test free agency. Now, it's not terrible, I guess, for the Cowboys, because they have Jake Ferguson that they brought in there last year, who, if you were watching games, you sometimes would be like, hey, Dalton Schultz has got a pass. Oh, wait, it's Jake Ferguson. They look like the same guy. So they might think that they can get that same sort of production out of him, and maybe they actually offered what is a good deal for a tight end, but not what Dalton Schultz thinks that he should get. Maybe it's a good deal to the Cowboys, no one else. Right. But I agree that Dalton Schultz is he's a very interesting tight end, because he is kind of your do-all tight end. He's a budget version of one of the top-end tight ends, but he's always seems to be productive. So a solid piece that you can definitely bring in, going to be good for any team. I like Gesicki too. He is definitely just a receiver. He's a
he's a move
body receiver. Hayden Hurst, Austin Hooper, it's a drop off from there. One of the guys that's talked about is my former guy, Irv Smith Jr., as he's kind of a sneaky guy in free agency that someone could get. He's
very young.
He's a receiving tight end as well. I liked what I saw out of him as a receiver, except for this year, drops and injuries. He's just constantly been injured. And part of the drops this year might be because he broke his fucking hand in training camp. You need your hands to catch, so you're going to have some issues with that. I mean, I want to say I love Irv Smith, but he's just been a disappointment because he is always hurt. So someone might get a steal out of him. If he stays healthy, he could easily be a top 10 tight end in the league as a receiver. I don't expect, based on his history, for him to stay healthy enough to do any of that.
All right. So here's what we're gonna do is I'm gonna preface this next one, and then I'm gonna go take a piss incredibly fast, and we're gonna get into some of the conversations about tackles in the league, because there's a couple of tackles that have some really good resumes in an Orlando Brown and a Taylor Lewan. Now there's some industry histories there. There's maybe some other things that people are worried about. But there's a couple of guys, if you really need a tackle, there's a couple of guys right there that have proven that they can go out and do it.
There's like 5 guys, dude, that are tackles. So I'll start getting into that while you go drain the main vein, bleed that lizard. All right. So right now, the top guy out there for offensive tackles is Orlando Brown Jr. for the Chiefs. They tried to work out a long-term deal with him, couldn't do it, and decided not to franchise tag him. Orlando Brown is the guy that he played right tackle for the Ravens, ended up moving to left tackle because of some injuries. And once he got that left tackle, pedigree and showed that he was pretty good at it, he wanted the left tackle money, which traditionally gets paid way more in the NFL. They wouldn't pay him there in Baltimore, kind of like they're not doing with Lamar. And so they ended up trading him out to the Chiefs, and he's been outstanding there for the Chiefs in the past. I believe this is his second year there, I believe. Either way, the guy's going to get paid a lot of money, north of $20 million a year, probably 21, 22 million a year on average. And the word right now around town is that the Bears are not going to let him leave the building tomorrow. They are going to hammer out a long-term deal with him, which makes sense because the Bears need a lot of help. They have a lot of cap space, and he is a phenomenal bookend tackle that you can really start to build your team around. But other names, Mike McGlinchey. He's a right tackle for San Francisco, or was. He's going to be looking probably north of $15 million a year. Was a high draft pick. He's coming off of that rookie contract. A guy that I really like as a right tackle. He's not as much of a stalwart as some other positions, but still pretty good. You have Jawan Taylor, who is coming off of that first-year contract as well for the Jaguars. Caleb McGarry, I don't know that I necessarily like him, but he's shown that he can be a competent starter coming from Atlanta. You also have Isaiah Wynn and, like Mike brought up earlier, Taylor Lewan. So we'll go back to the top of this list, Mike, real quick. So the top guy that everyone's talking about, Orlando Brown Jr.
He's the best tackle of this group for sure.
He's going to get signed for north of 20 million, probably 22 to 25 million a year. And the word around town is that the Bears are not going to let him walk away tomorrow. That they have all the cap money to go for. They need offensive line help to protect their investments. They can afford to pay this guy. And Poles knows Brown from when Poles was with the Chiefs. The connections there.
He's the one that made the deal to get him over from the Ravens.
Yes. So you want a bookend piece to start rebuilding that offense. You need to go out and get yourself a solid left tackle. And that's
you're talking about a guy who's just getting ready to turn 27 in Orlando Brown. He's been fantastic since he got in the league. Goes out, wins a couple Super Bowls. He knows how to play with winning culture. Like, I love Orlando Brown, and to the Bears makes a ton of sense. Like, they should absolutely be on the phone trying to sign this guy. Like, if the Browns were not in a weird contract situation with Jedrick Wills, I would be banging the fucking table to go out and find a guy like an Orlando Brown Jr. This is the best guy on the market.
Anyone that needs a left tackle, he's the guy that you want. Like,
yes, 100%.
You want to pay him. It's just you're going to get outpaced by the Bears because they're in that situation. Like, let's rebuild this team. We have all this money. We made all this money last year by dumping contracts and stuff like that. So that way we can make a silly goose deal out here if we need to on a not generational talent, but on just a long-term set piece for this team. That's Orlando Brown. It makes too much sense for them to do that. So the other guys here, Mike McGlinchey, right tackle from San Fran.
I like Mike McGlinchey. I just don't know as a right tackle how much he could possibly command, and if he's a fit anywhere besides San Francisco. You're going to have to look for a scheme fit, I think, with McGlinchey.
Yeah, he's probably going to be 15 to 18 mil a year, I would assume. PFF has him at 16 on a 4-year deal, which makes sense to me. That is good starting right tackle money in this league. And yeah, he is definitely a fit for their offense. This year, like his rookie year coming in the league, he had some issues where he looked like a turnstile sometimes. Then he's been pretty solid since then until this year. We started to see some of that turnstile issue again. I don't know that that's necessarily him. I think maybe just had a down year or something like that.
But
Or
that's hard
maybe
it's hard to make excuses for guys in that West Coast wide zone system that we see in San Francisco where Mike McGlinchey has been. Like, I like him. I like some of his abilities, but man, I just it's not a guy that I'm like, this is a guy I gotta go out and get. I like Mike. He's a
if you
good
want,
fucking football player.
yeah,
But
if you want a set it and forget it right tackle for 3-4 years, he'll do perfectly fine for you. It's just, do you want to shoot for the stars on someone, maybe go draft a guy, or do you just want to be like, I don't want to think about this position, so let's just go get this guy and whatever happens happens. Like,
yeah.
he's a decent set piece for you, and not a guy that I hate. Juwan Taylor coming off that rookie deal from Jacksonville. He's going to be looking a little bit higher because he is a left tackle, so he's going to be closer to like the 18-19 million range, I think, even though he isn't worth that money as of right now, but we're just talking left tackle contract, so he's going to be expensive. He's a guy that I really liked in the draft. Not really liked, but I thought he was going to be a solid left tackle in the draft, and he's done all right so far. It's a little surprising to me that they're going to let him walk in Jacksonville, because I feel like you just want to build up as good of a line as you can around your franchise quarterback there in Lawrence. But he's been at least an average left tackle in this league. So yeah, he's a decent set piece. Caleb McGarry from Atlanta. He's a guy that, again, is average. His best year of his career was last year with a PFF rating of 86.6. That ranks him as the 4th best tackle in the league.
Those are good numbers. That's great, especially if you believe PFF. Like, I like PFF, but I don't necessarily know that I always trust PFF. And I have a little bit harder time. I always have a little bit harder time with PFF's rankings of some of their offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. Like, I like what they
always
do
take with a grain of salt. But I mean, they're rating him as the 59th and the 53rd best tackle, respectively, in 2021 and 2022 or 2020. So 2022, kind of his best year, especially in recent history. So for a guy that's going to be 28, you're not expecting him to be a super long-term answer there. He's definitely some guy that you can bring in for 3-4 years, but by the end of that time, you're expecting that you're going to need to have moved on to a new guy by then.
So a guy that I'm interested in is Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan has been an all-pro multiple times, was steadfast for that fucking Titans team. But you also saw dips in Taylor Lewan's play. Like, he got absolutely fucking toasted by Chandler Jones. And Taylor will tell you as much as well. Like, they have a great podcast. Him and God, I just forgot his name.
I can never remember that guy's name.
Fucking Bussin' with the Boys. Yep. They're great on Barstool. Is Taylor going out and looking for big time money again? Is Taylor, maybe with the injuries that are continuing to pile up, is he maybe looking to go on, do something else with his career? Yeah, thank you. Will Compton, Nebraska linebacker. Fucking, he's for the boys. I should have known that.
Yeah. I like Taylor Lewan a lot too, as a dude.
It's starting to slip a little bit, right?
He's gonna be going this year, gonna be turning 32, and it's been injuries the past couple of years, man. That's really what's hurt him. When he is out there actually playing, he's top 30 in the league as a left tackle. It's the injuries, though, man. It's the injury bug keeps on getting at him. The age is there. I know that there's been kind of those rumblings of, am I looking to retire? This is a guy that's going to go sign somewhere for, I think, a year. And if he plays really well, maybe he gets another year. If he gets hurt again, he's done.
This guy has the potential to make so much money outside of football, though. Like the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, those dudes go fucking hard. They are fantastic. Like, I love watching their clips. All the shit that they put out is great. So how much do you want to continue to invest into playing with the amount of injuries that you've had? Because a team can go out there, if they sign him, they can get a really good player as long as he's on the field. but is he going to always be on the field? And is Taylor's heart in it the way it was? He's a dude. Like, I love Taylor Lewan. He is a bad motherfucker. One of the reasons that he dropped in the draft is because he is a bad motherfucker. He will smack you in the mouth for talking anything crazy. I love him calling out dudes on the sideline, getting into fights with fucking cornerbacks. But is that going to hold up for too much longer with the injury history?
Yeah, that's on. So PFF has him as a 1 year, $7 million deal. That is a really good, cheap deal for a guy, but you're looking at him as being a stopgap. This is a 1 year stopgap of like, hey, I don't have a left tackle. I might draft me one. It's probably not going to be in the first round. I'm going to take Taylor Lewan, try to develop a guy for the next year. It's a priority, but not a top priority. So I'm going to get a guy that I know can play, and hopefully he's able to last a whole season and be at least average. Maybe we get more out of him. Maybe we don't. But like I said, he's the type of guy that you said it too. He's a dude. Fucking love his mentality.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I would love him on my team. I got no room for him on my Vikings, but like as a prospective team,
I would take Taylor Lewan over fucking
like.
Jedrick Wills, because when Jedrick's on the field, I have concerns that he's going to do his job. When Taylor's on the field, I don't have concerns too often that Taylor's going to be able to do his job. My concerns with Taylor is he going to be on the field? And as long as he's not playing against fucking Chandler Jones, I like his chances.
Mm-hmm. There's also a decent amount of tackles in this free agency class that are starter level, but they're only going to be average, maybe below average. So definitely guys that you can find better replacements for, but they're going to be coming actually relatively cheap for tackles this year because the market is kind of flooded. I'm going to just run through a bunch of names here. Kelvin Beachum, Jermaine Illuminor, Cameron Fleming, Donovan Smith, George Fant, Trey Pipkins, Andrew Wiley, Billy Turner, Brandon Shell, a bunch of names that are guys that were starting as recently as last year who have a lot of experience. They're not going to be anything that you get excited about, but if you need a guy, you're going to be able to find one this year at a relatively cheap price, because some of these guys are being talked at as being like $5 to $7 million per year for a couple year deal. That's a pretty good deal for some of these younger guys, like a Trey Pipkins. If you want a guy with upside, Pipkins actually looked really good coming in last year as a backup. He was not expected to start and ended up having to start and did all right for himself. He's only 26 and a half years old, and you're going to be paying him maybe $7 million a year for a couple of years. That's a guy that you can feel really good about, where if he has to start, I'm okay. But otherwise, I got a really good swing tackle out of him. Guys like that.
And there are some swing tackles in here that are going to get paid as well. Like there's a guy in got Chris Hubbard for the Browns that I want to bring back because he's fantastic at the swing tackle spot, but I don't want to pay him what he might command for that spot. So there are plenty of guys, like you just said, that can go out, they can produce, they can be a starting right tackle, left tackle. Maybe not necessarily want them at the left tackle spot, better at the right tackle spot, but regardless, they are a solid number 6 offensive lineman as a swing tackle, and they're going to be vital pieces to your team, because it's very rare you make it through an entire season with all 16 through all 17 games with your same starting 5.
Yeah. Kelvin Beachum, free agent this year. Not really talking about him as far as getting picked up, but did you hear his comments this week about Kyler?
That he needs to grow up and be a fucking adult.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a little bit of what Pat P had said, of like the guy needs a maturity check. Like he did a really good job of coming out and saying, hey, Kyler, you're a fucking child, grow up a little bit. He did a good job of it as a pro who's almost going to be 34 years old, being like, I'm not saying Kyler doesn't have it within him. I'm just saying I haven't really seen it, and he needs to do a better job.
Kyler is a child. I mean, that is things that we've talked about in the past. Kyler's a child. He doesn't know how to be mature. He does not. Just
more bad news, I suppose, for the Cardinals.
I feel honestly. So we have a lot of friends who are Cardinals fans. We just, you're still in Arizona. I spent the last 4 years in Arizona before I moved out here, and I feel bad for them right now because that team was looking like they were on the up and up for a second, and then it came down so fast.
Yeah, 2 years ago, it looked like they had something going for them, and then they didn't.
Yeah, and it was a dramatic drop off. It's because their head coach was concerned with looking cool and being a dude, and their quarterback he wants to be a fucking video gamer and doesn't study. And the fact that your organization would put out the contract details that says that our quarterback has to study, like, I don't
And they don't want to
understand.
feed their players.
And and they have one of the worst fucking grades in the NFL about how they take care of their players.
Yeah.
They're in a bad spot.
They need a huge culture change. Culture change. And
yes,
they made the right move of getting rid of their head coach and their GM. Their replacements, I'm not at least at the head coach
thrilled
spot,
about.
I'm not high on.
They're there for a year, and then they will find another one.
Yeah,
that's
a bum.
But let's move on to the next position group. This is a group that I don't think we're going to need to spend a ton of time on. We're going to talk about the guards real quick. So we got a couple guys, Graham Glasgow, Justin Pugh, Jacob Jackson. Those are some of the bigger guys, bigger names that are in this class. But a guy that I really like, Roger Saffold, he's been around the league for a long time, is going to be a steady contributor on your offensive line for you. I think that this guard group, if you really need interior line, your best bet is going to be looking to the draft, though. If you're looking for somebody that you can build and grow, you got a couple of guys that are good, not great, and they are just plug and play pieces. But if you are really trying to build a young core of offensive linemen, this is not a good year to need interior offensive linemen from the interior line spot.
Yeah, the top rated guy according to PFF, Isaac Seumalo, he's going to be almost 30 going in this year. He is a solid guard for sure. You feel good about him coming in for 2-3 years, but because of the age, you're going to question things after that, and you're going to be paying him a decent amount. You're talking 12 mil or so. Ben Powers is maybe the only other guy that I feel good about trying to build a little bit with. He played for the Ravens most recently. You're probably getting him for close to 10 mil. He is being ranked in the top 50 guards the past 3 years. So that's something that you can definitely work with. If you want a guard for more than 2 or 3 years, he's the main guy I would go after. But as far as long-term building blocks, there's not a ton to get really excited about.
Yeah, I mean, this is the way, and this is interior offensive linemen as a whole. Nobody gets less credit for winning a football game than interior offensive linemen.
Yeah.
It is a thankless job. It is a unbelievably important job. And I tell all of my young offensive linemen this when we're out on a youth football field. If you want to ruin a play, you generate pressure up the middle on any fucking play. Run, pass, doesn't matter. I don't need you to bend the edge. I don't need you to do all sorts of crazy things. You want to ruin any play, immediately you generate pressure up the middle. It does not matter what the fucking play is. So they're incredibly important. And these guys are steady contributors, but there's not a guy that I'm like, I need this young man on my team because he's going to help solidify the interior of my offensive line. There isn't one of those.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to the centers then?
Yeah. So let's move on to center. Let me pull up these names real quick.
So your guy coming from the Browns there, Ethan Pochich, is PFF's #1 rated guy. He's someone that has rated okay the past several years. Last year, 3rd rated center, technically according to PFF. He's a guy I really liked coming out in the draft, and now, mind you, he's about to be 28 years old, so this was a while ago, and he never really showed his draft position.
Well, now he spent a long time he spent a long time in Seattle and it never worked out. And then he comes to Cleveland, gets under the tutelage of just an excellent, the best offensive line coach in the entire NFL in Bill Callahan. And it all starts to click. I want Ethan Pochich back because I like Nick Harris. I like our backup, or the guy who was supposed to start last year before he got hurt. But I don't know that I trust Nick Harris, but I saw what Ethan Pochich can do. The kid can play. He is very good. He is a good anchor in the middle of your offensive line. This is the dude, if you're looking for a center, who I'd go out and get. And the Browns are in a position where we have Nick Harris coming back off of an injury. We'll see how he performs. And Ethan Poach is our only other guy. I want him back. I don't know if we'll be able to get him back. There's been some conversations amongst, media outlets. Mary Kay Cabot, who is a fantastic reporter here in Cleveland, has talked about it a little bit. Bringing Ethan Poach back to me makes a ton of sense. There's been small inklings that both sides want to get it done, but I don't know if there is enough to get it done because he's going to command a pretty decent salary because he took all of those pre-draft things, didn't work out, and now now it's finally built to him actually being a pro's pro and being a top level starter. I want him back. I don't know if we'll get him, but that's the dude that you should, if you're looking for a center, you need a center. That's the guy you want, in my opinion. Rodney Hudson's gone. Jason Kelsey's going back to Philly. If he doesn't retire, are there any other names? Are you clamoring to get Garrett Bradbury back?
So clamoring, no. My assumption is that we'll end up re-signing Bradbury. The problem is that is he going to be too expensive? Like, he's had one good year since we drafted him, and it was last year. And that comes a little bit with the system, but he's also coming off this back injury, which then was re-injured right after he was starting to feel a little bit better because of a car accident. And that last game he came back didn't look great. He's still ranked out as the 11th best center in the league, according to PFS last year. I thought he was average at best, which average is better than we've gotten from him ever in his career. And I'm worried about that being a flash in the pan / his injury with
contract
the back.
Year, baby.
Lower
contract
back,
year, he performs better.
And lower back injuries are tough. On the flip side, we have Connor McGovern, not the guard Connor McGovern, because there's two guys with the exact same name out there this year. Connor McGovern, the center, played for the Jets most recently. He has perennially been a top 10 center. And when I say top 10, he's been like 9th and 10th pretty much every year in the league. He's solid. He's going to be 30. The word is that there is mutual interest for him to come to the Vikings because he's a North Dakota boy. So coming back home to the Midwest would be something that he'd like. I like the play out of him. I think that he's a solid pickup if we're able to get him. I think he's just going to be more expensive than Bradbury. The reason why I would want to go with McGovern over Bradbury is that injury history and everything. But Bradbury is going to be cheaper, but maybe not a ton cheaper, which is unfortunate because if Bradbury is looking for more than $5 million a year, I'm out. And right now they're expected him to be going for closer to $7 million a year, which is right around what McGovern is going to be looking at. So it's an interesting situation there. And it kind of sucks. If you need a center, you're kind of screwed because it's not like a great free agent class here for centers. And draft,
for me, the only guy is Poachich. Like, that's the only guy I'm like, I want to go get him.
Mm-hmm. And in the draft, you've got like 3-4 guys that you really feel okay about.
In rounds 2 through 4, 2 through 5, I think you can get a pretty decent and a starting caliber center in this draft.
You got Avila, who plays mostly guard but can play some center. JMS, who's the best center in the draft, and you feel fantastic about starting right away. And then you have some guys that you have questions on, Tittman and Juice Scruggs, and God, I can't think of the other guys. There's another one with Tittman that gets talked about from Ohio State, I think.
Oh, God damn it. No,
Wiley?
His name. Yep.
Is it Wiley?
No, hang on. It might be. I just talked about this kid the other day, and I'm having a massive brain fart. Whippler. Luke Whippler. Not Wiley, Whippler.
Yeah. Anyway, who I don't feel fantastic about. You have some of those guys.
He's got some flaws, but
I don't like. I like some of those guys that we talked about there at the end as prospects. Day one starters, I'm not clamoring for. I think that they need some developmental work. So
I think there's about 3 guys. Like JMS for sure starts day one.
Yep. If you want to start Avila as center, I think he starts day one as well.
Yeah. I actually think Tittman. I think Tittman can start day one.
And Oli Olusegun, I know that he's the guy that you like.
Mm-hmm.
I do like him as a long-term starter. I don't know how I feel about him day one still, like starting day one. So but he's definitely a guy that I would target in the draft. It's just
I
if
mean,
you need a
I
guy
like
right
Oakley.
now,
I like Oakley, man. I really
yeah,
like him. Like,
if you need a guy to start right now, though, it's a rougher class for both the draft and free agency. I mean, there's 32 teams. I know there's not 32 openings, but centers are in need, man. There's a lot of teams that need centers, whether it's the Vikings, the Buccaneers, the Commanders. They
the
are all
fucking
really in
Browns. The
need.
Browns need one too because we're not sure
Browns,
if Nick Harris
Giants.
is the guy.
Yes, there's a lot of teams that do need a guy, so it could definitely inflate the market a little bit.
Yeah,
Not a great year
I
for
think it
centers.
probably will. But let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line. We'll break this down between. Well, actually, we're going to do it 3 different ways. Defensive line, because we got edge rushers who are going to be your prototypical 3-4 outside linebackers can step up. We'll talk about straight 4-3 D ends, and then we'll talk D tackles. So we'll go to the edge first. So for me, this is not a position that I am necessarily concerned with because it's for the most part, 3-4 outside linebackers. Those are going to be your big names, your big guys. But my Browns don't run that. So that's not the guys that I'm looking at because you got some decent names. Like you got a Bud Dupree. I don't love, but I do love a Leonard Floyd. Like I really like his ability. I think that he is not a premier pass rusher, but works great as a number 2 behind a dominant guy like we saw with a Aaron Donald. But I don't know that he can line up as a 4-3 D end. I see him only as an outside linebacker. D end wise, I mean, there are some good names, but like if we're talking 4-3, I'm sorry, 3-4 outside linebackers, are there names that are jumping off of here other than a Leonard Floyd for you? Because for me, I'm not in on a Bud Dupree.
Yeah, there's not a ton of great options right now. Now, this might open up a little bit more with Zadarius Smith. He is asked for a release. I have
Has
been
not been
saying,
granted it.
right, and I'm saying that we should release him. We save about 12 mil in cap and only take like 2 mil hit on releasing him. That's the way that we set up that deal, so that we could get out after a year, and I'm fine with that. But they don't want to. Now, for me on the list I'm looking at here on PFF, it lists edge defenders all the same. So that's 4-3 and 3-4. So it's kind of tough to break down exactly which, because some of these guys could play either way. And it is a fairly expansive list. You're just dealing with a lot of guys who are a little bit older, but some really interesting guys that could come in for a year or two here or there. So just running through this list here, Marcus Davenport, Jadeveon Clowney, Charles Omenihu. He's one of those younger guys who's only 25 and a half years old. Arden Key, Samson Abukum, Agbania Okoronkwo. Fuck if I can't Houston, so I don't know.
All right.
But you got some of those, again, older guys have been around a little bit. Yannick Ngakoue, Leonard Floyd, like you brought up earlier. Brandon Graham, I believe, is set to re-sign.
He's re-signing back with Philly.
Philly, but
was a very
35.
That sucked. I wanted him though, man. I really did because I wanted him to go back with Schwartz. Okay. I really wanted to sign him. I know it wasn't going to be a long-term deal. I wanted a 1 or 2 year deal. Give Miles a veteran guy on the opposite side of him. I really wanted him. It's not going to happen. He's re-signing with Philly. So now I'm looking at 4-3 D ends. I see a Frank Clark, but I don't know that I can afford a Frank Clark, and I don't necessarily know that I love Frank Clark.
It's surprising to me. He's rated so much lower than a lot of these guys for what Frank Clark has produced. Frank Clark isn't even 30 yet. He's going to be 30 this year, but they're expecting him to sign just like a 1 year deal for like 6 to 7 million. Like, not
it feels
that
like
much.
Frank Clark has been in the league for a fucking decade.
Yeah.
It feels like he's been around forever.
Somehow he's not being rated as high as I would expect him to. You also have Justin Houston out there who, again, almost going to be 35, but he's still been very productive. And you're able to get him for like 4 to 5 million, which is insane how cheap that is. Melvin Ingram, even. So Melvin Ingram consistently rates as one of the better rushing type linebackers, that 3-4 style linebacker. He's had roles where sometimes he's been full-time starter. Sometimes his role is where he's just a pass rusher. but he's been very, very productive regardless. The
Well,
guy's
so
going to be
I
34 years old, but he's also
I
going to be
think
cheap.
his problem is that he doesn't get home enough. He creates a lot of pressures, but doesn't necessarily finish. Doesn't get the sack.
Mhm.
Now, pressures are great. You need pressures, but I want to see a guy who can also finish. I want a guy who can go out and get himself. I want 10 sacks. I need 10 sacks on the opposite side. And I look at these names. Yannick Ngakoue is very rarely a 10 sack guy. What 1 year with 10
Yeah.
sacks?
Mhm.
I Matt Ioannidis. I like some of the abilities. Cleveland Farrell, I'm fucking out on. He never should have been drafted as high as he was. There's not a guy that jumps out on this list to me that I'm like, I really, really want this guy. And this is a position that the Browns really fucking need opposite of Myles Garrett. We're getting rid of Jadeveon Clowney because for all the good things that Jadeveon Clowney does in the run game, he generates pressures, doesn't finish, and can be a problem in your locker room. So
Yeah.
I see this list and like, if Yannick Ngakoue is the only guy that is age appropriate for a deal I can get, but doesn't create doesn't create sacks, it's tough for me.
Yeah, this is another one of those positions where I think it's kind of the contracts. You got older players that are going to sign for lower end contracts. You're going to be able to get good budget players that are veterans to come in and just do not necessarily phenomenal for you, but they're going to play a good role. It's another year where the draft, there's a lot of really good edge defenders in this draft. Like whether it's 3-4 or 4-3 ends, there's a lot of guys, and this goes pretty deep. You know, the strongest positions in this draft right now are like running back and edge defender. There's some talk about wide receiver, but that drops off around round 4. So in cornerback as well, it's a decent cornerback draft, but it's not a super strong draft in a lot of those other areas because it is stronger there with the edge defender. You can go and get a guy in the middle rounds who might be able to, in a year or two, put up as much production as some of these guys. But with their age, they will be stopgap guys. I mean, for my team, I'm looking for budget guys and guys that know Brian Flores' system. Kyle Van Noy, he's going to be 33 years old, but he's played for Flores, whether it's been in New England or in Miami. He knows that system well as an outside linebacker, a 3-4 guy. He's not necessarily a great rusher, but he is a good all-around player, which is something that we're going to need, especially if we need to replace a guy like a Zadarius Smith, who is primarily just a rusher. You've got guys like Shaq Lawson, who is going to be going on 29 years old, never really panned out great for Buffalo, but you like what Buffalo has done with those guys, and they've had a lot of linemen where it's like maybe he's getting kind of lost in the mix.
Well, and I liked his athletic ability when he was with the Bengals. It just never fully translated, and we see that all the time. Like that's a Jadeveon Clowney perfect comp. All the physical abilities in the world doesn't necessarily translate to the things that you're always looking for on the field.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting here. Marcus Davenport, I think, is the biggest get out of all these guys. He's not even 27 yet, coming from New Orleans, and he's consistently ranking in the top 25 of edge rushers or edge defenders. So he is probably the premier guy as far as a long-term signing in this group. But the other guys, it's like a lot of good names who are
big names that people know,
or big names that never reach their full potential.
Right.
So maybe they can find something else in a different defense. I don't know.
All right. So you got anything else on edge defenders before we get into some D tackles then? Because we kind of rolled those into one.
Yeah, we can go straight to the D tackles there.
All right, so D tackles, and this is a massive need for the Cleveland Browns. We need to solidify the interior of our defensive line, and there's a guy right at the top that I want automatically. I want Javon Hargrave. I want him so fucking bad. I mean, you get 11 sacks from a D tackle spot. You're a guy that can generate pressure from that 3 technique. You can do a lot of different things. I want him so bad, but he is going to cost so much money. I don't know if my Browns can afford him, but
he's going to be close to $20 million.
There's going to be some other good names on this list that can be productive.
Mhm.
Mm.
So Dalvin Tomlinson is the second rated guy for PFF. This is a guy the Vikings are still actively working to re-sign. He was supposed to have his contract voided a week or two ago, and they pushed the void deadline back. He agreed to that to the 15th. So we are still trying to work on that with him. I like Dalvin Thompson a lot. He is just consummate, solid, always there. He's not a penetrator, though. We need a penetrating presence. And what was interesting to me was that he definitely felt like to me like a profile of a nose tackle with his size. That one gap, A gap type guy. We're using him as a 5 tech almost in our 3-4 with Harrison Phillips as our nose. I feel like those guys should have been flipped. And they might. That's one of the things that Flores has said for us is that he wants guys with versatility all along the line that can play different positions. And I think that Dalvin Thompson fits with that, along with Harrison Phillips fits with that. We don't have a third guy, so we'll be looking into the draft for that. So I think that we probably end up working out some sort of a deal with him. We just still have a lot more moves to make to get cap compliant. The other thing is he's 29. Those interior guys, you can ride them well into their early 30s, up to like 34 years old or so. It's just we need more penetration from those guys, and Dalvin Thompson isn't necessarily going to bring that to you. So if we can work out the numbers with him, I would love to bring him back. My gut feeling is that we will, but if he hits the market, he's going to be sought after for sure.
So for me, a guy that can be you can have a little versatility as a 1 technique, and also I like his ability to penetrate as a 3 technique is Sheldon Rankins out of the Jets. Like he has some ability, and he's going to be available. That is my 1B guy. If I'm not able to go out and I'm not able to sign a Hargraves because his cap hit is going to be so high at like almost $20 million a year. You can look at a Sheldon Rankins and you can get a similar production, maybe not as high, but I also really like his ability. I think he has a little bit of scheme versatility. So that's another guy that I like if I am really needing a D tackle who has some penetrating ability, but it can also stop the run a little bit. I think he's a good option.
And Rankins is a weird one where his career progression has kind of been up and down. So came in as a highly touted first round pick and looked really good with New Orleans for those first couple of years. By the end of his time, they let his contract expire because he wasn't looking as good by the end of that first contract. Goes to the Jets, first year with the Jets, looks terrible. And then last year he looks pretty damn good again. So it's kind of like, what sort of Sheldon Rankins are you going to get? You're not super sure, but he's obviously got the potential to be pretty decent there in the right system, right scheme, right fit. So he's an interesting one. He's going to be a guy that you can actually get relatively cheap because he's had that inconsistency, probably a $6 to $7 million a year deal. And he does have that flexibility on the interior.
All right. Any other guys on the interior, the defensive line we want to talk about before we move on to some linebackers?
A guy who's been consistently productive, except for this last year, is Apuna Ford, undersized D tackle for Seattle. I would assume that they're going to try to probably bring him back on a pretty cheap deal. He's been way productive compared to where they got him. I believe he was like a UDFA or a super late round pick, and he's been pretty nice complimentary piece for them. Other than that, I know you brought him up earlier, but Matt Ioannidis, I think, is a 3-4 lineman, and he has the ability to play kind of their defensive end.
Yeah, he's a 5 technique. He looks like a 5 technique.
He's a guy that was always, again, really productive, really solid, not anything super special when he played for the Commanders. And then it's been an injury issue the past couple years, especially this last year with the Panthers, where you really didn't get to see anything out of him. So he's going to kind of be more of your budget guy that has higher upside as being a solid starter if he stays healthy.
All right. So let's slide over into the linebacker spot. So we've already talked about some of these outside linebackers, pass rushers, but there are some other outside linebackers that we should talk about who are not necessarily your pass rush specialists. Now, I look at this list. I see Bud Dupree, Leonard Floyd, Marcus Golden, Melvin Ingram. But you get down to your boy, I can't say his name either. Or Onkwo. I think he's got some interesting abilities to play a little bit of outside linebacker in a 3-4 and some outside linebacker in a 4-3, as long as you are using him the right way. This is an interesting group. There's not a ton of guys. A guy that you know very well, and Anthony Barr, who at one point was a sideline to sideline linebacker, but outside of your big name guys who are pass rushers, is there a guy that pops out to you other than Jesus Christ,
It's tough, right?
Okoronkwo?
The thesaurus type thing. You're gonna figure this out. Are you talking just like outside guys or linebackers in general?
So we can talk. I was talking outside linebackers in general. I'm not talking about inside linebackers yet, because an inside linebacker, and you guys learned this probably the hard way this year, an inside linebacker in a 3-4 and an inside linebacker in a 4-3 are two very different fucking players.
Yeah. It's difficult. I don't really have a ton of those outside guys that I really like. Like I said, that you have some of the aging guys that might be able to work out well, but I'm not super high on any of them. And I think, again, you're just the best value that you're going to find is in that draft. The interior guys, whether it's 4-3 or 3-4, are a lot more interesting to me, because I think that there's going to be some really solid ones that hit here. Some guys that I'm surprised that they aren't being rated higher as far as like how much money they're expected to command. But the interior guys are where I think you have a little bit more meat as far as this linebacker group, even if they're like 4-3 outside linebackers, who, you know, aren't necessarily going to be your traditional rushers. There's guys there that I actually think are pretty solid that I'm interested in.
Okay. Now, one guy I will bring up, Kazir White out of Philly. I'm going to bring him up because he's coming from Philly. That's where my new defensive coordinator is coming from. I mean, the guy was ultra productive, 110 tackles, 2 sacks, a couple of quarterback hits.
Past 2 years, he's been very productive.
So that's a guy I could see being a fit, not only as a 3-4, but also as a 4-3. He can do a lot of different things. So that is a guy that I would be interested to see if the Browns are in conversations, especially since he has some familiarity with Schwartz. So let's slide over to the inside linebackers then, because there are some dudes here. I know one guy that you are going to be, I think, going to be missing quite a bit, and Eric Kendricks, no longer going back, but can be very productive still, young, well, young-ish, 31. I think he's still got a lot of football. I mean, like, the guy is ultra productive. He just gets tackle after tackle after tackle. He is going to pad the fucking stat lines and tackles.
And he's great in coverage. He's great in coverage too. He was extremely misused in our defense last year. I think he can be successful as your inside backer in a 3-4 as well. But the money just did not work out for us. So it made sense to move on. I would have loved to have restructured and brought him down, but he's going to be able to get about what he was getting for us with another team, especially if it's a 4-3. He's just a lockdown commander in the center field there. So I'm sad to see him go. I hope him the best in the rest of his career, because not only that, he's one of the best guys in your locker room, man. He's a big difference maker in the community. Been perennial team captain. Like, him and Bobby Wagner for the longest time were like neck and neck for top inside linebacker in the league as far as who was getting the most tackles, who was getting the most interceptions and stuff like that. Both of them are good stopping the run. Both are good in the pass game. So, and both of them are free agents now. So someone's going to be able to get some good inside linebacker play there. Some of the younger guys, I mean, you got Levante David, who is now a free agent as well. He's just getting
not a younger guy, but God,
33 years old.
Yeah, he's just getting old.
Yeah. But some of the bigger names that we're going to be talking about here, Tremaine Edmonds from Buffalo, who was so up until this last year, just really popped off the tape this last year. Looked great.
He had a great defensive line in front of him. You got to have a good defensive line in front of some of these guys so they can eat up blocks, so that these guys can go and hunt. And Tremaine Edmonds had that this year, and he was able to go out and hunt.
Yep. A David Long, who kind of a little bit more under the radar, coming from the Titans. He's just one of those guys that's very productive consistently. TJ Edwards from Philly, that's going to be a big get for someone. I think that he is just starting to come into his own as a good inside linebacker. Bobby Okereke, I almost like him a little bit more transition to that 3-4 outside. I think that he'll be interesting. Leighton Vander Esch, a high pick for the Cowboys, and people that People know him a lot, but again, injury issues with him has really rough things up. And then you have a bunch of guys that were like very productive, but low end guys, and they're still going to be low end guys. In Alex Singleton, who we saw extremely productive with the Eagles, extremely productive with the Broncos, but he's just a tackle machine, but he's not always in the right spot. So he'll get those tackles, but he won't necessarily provide you like the best defensive coverage that you're looking for or be playing the position as well as you should. Drew Tranquil is kind of the same way. He's actually a guy that I'm hoping that the Vikings look at as a veteran target for inside linebacker because Jordan Hicks is still on our roster right now. I don't expect him to be within the next 72 hours because he was absolutely terrible for us last year, despite still getting a decent amount of tackles. And we can cut him for $5 million savings, no dead cap hit. So absolutely something that we should do because we're right at about $5 million before we need to get under the cap. And like I said, this is going to be a bloodbath. We're going to see some more guys go here for the Vikings real quick. If it hasn't happened already, I'm not paying attention right now.
And there's a guy in this list that has just unbelievable athletic ability, has just never put it all together. Coming from one of my division rivals in a Devin Bush. Mm-hmm. Like when Devin Bush was coming out in the draft, everybody was like, I need this type of linebacker on my fucking team. I need a sideline to sideline guy who can cover, who can thump you in the middle, and it just hasn't put it all together. Is that because of where he's played? Is that, or is he just not going to meet that massive potential? I mean, the kid's not even 25 years old yet.
Yeah, he's been playing for Pittsburgh, though, and they're usually good at developing their linebackers. And so you would have thought with his potential, even though I guess he's a little bit undersized for that Pittsburgh linebacker role, you figured you would have seen something out of him, and it just never materialized. So it's interesting. I would trust the coaching there in Pittsburgh to be able to get the most out of him. And obviously that most wasn't very much. So that's a little bit of a scarier one for me. He's going to come as a real cheap option to see if someone can develop him.
I think he gets a proven deal.
Sure. What do you think about Anthony Walker? Any thoughts about trying to bring him back?
Yeah. So listen, I like Anthony Walker. I love his leadership and the things that he brings to a locker room. I like some of his abilities. We Browns fans thought he was a big get coming over from the Colts because he was a big piece of what they did at that linebacker spot when they were really building a good linebacker core, but we can't keep him on the field. His injury issues have popped up time and time again. Both years that he has been in Cleveland, it has popped up. He only played, 3 games this year for us? Yeah, 3 games this year. And in those 3 games, he gets 119 snaps. He gets 13 tackles. I'm not going to blame that all on Anthony Walker. Our defensive line was fucking terrible. They were just driving defensive line back into our linebackers' laps this year. So I can't put all that on Anthony Walker. I like his leadership ability. He's a guy that you can give the dot to. He can call your defense. I would consider re-signing him, but it's got to be super, super cheap because of the injury issues.
Yeah, and I think that he probably is cheap. You're talking around $2 million, honestly, is where they got him rated on PFF. So an interesting situation. The guy out of this list, that the one that I didn't mention yet, that I really would like to try to go out and get is Azeez Al-Shaair from the 49ers. He's only 25 years old. He was a 2nd round pick coming off that first contract. They put a restricted free agent tender on him. So his price tag is going to be $4 million per year. And I think that if someone offers him that, he'll end up getting re-signed by San Francisco, that they'll match it. Because he's in a defensive linebacker backfield with some pretty damn good guys, and Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. And I feel like he is very close to like a Dre Greenlaw type of player. Shaair is definitely better in the run game than he is in the pass game as far as like defending the pass. He's a decent pass rusher as well. So for me, I think that he fits well as a guy that could transition to a 3-4 outside linebacker in rush situations, but having 2 middle linebackers out there in this 4-3, we're going to be running with a speedster in our rookie from last year, and a Shaair I kind of would like to bring in there as well. I think that he brings a cool dynamic. I expected him to be going for more than $4 million per year, honestly, if he was to just hit the open market without a restricted free agent tender. But because he's restricted, that's the starting price is at $4 million for him. So, and probably roughly what someone's going to offer him.
All right. You ready to slide over into some cornerbacks?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, cornerback, another interesting group. There's some guys in here that can absolutely play, but I don't know if their name is now bigger than their production. And the guy that I'm talking about right off the rip, Marcus Peters. I like Marcus Peters. He's been a pain in my ass for years, but is the name bigger than what Marcus Peters actually is now?
Yeah, his play's fallen off a little bit. I loved Marcus Peters coming out of the draft. I was really banging the table for him. We ended up taking, God, I can't think of the guy's name. He just recently retired from Michigan State. Either way, Marcus Peters, I mean, he's your boomer bust type of guy and has been for a lot of his career, a lot of interceptions. He's a guy that kind of gets in trouble a little bit too, sidelines or off the field type stuff. But he's a fun guy to watch. He's just getting up there in age. He's 30 years old. So you're going to see more boom than bust, I think, out of him, unfortunately. Cornerbacks are going to get paid because of the way the passing league is this year.
Yes.
And so you're not seeing a ton of the top guys really hitting the market right now, though. Like a Darius Slay, albeit being older, has gotten permission to go seek a trade now. So
yeah,
maybe not a free agent, but a guy that
they're crazy to let Darius Slay go. Darius Slay is a fucking stud, man.
It is surprising that they're doing that, which makes me think that they might end up going cornerback in the draft with one of their 2 first-round picks if there's one available for them there, especially if they're able to move Slay, because Slay, he's expensive for sure, and they're going to have a lot of guys that they need to pay on this Philly team. But to let him walk doesn't feel great, especially when you do have James Bradbury out there as a free agent as well for Philly, who's going to be one of those better slot cornerback type of guys, in my opinion. I know he can play some outside, and yes, he's also getting a little bit up there in age. He's about to be 30 for James Bradbury, but he's just been consummate solid for you. So to have 2 of your main cornerbacks leaving, that would be a big loss for Philly, a big hurt to their defense. You also have a Jamel Dean who is very good. He's going to be considered the top cornerback in this class. I don't think that he's like a top number 1 guy on a lot of teams. Yeah. He's at least a high end 2 and a bottom end 1 on a lot of teams. But he's going to be getting paid like he's the number 1 guy. You're talking 4 years, $17 million deal with a lot of that being guaranteed, which is too sweet for me. Like that's just too much. Cameron Sutton, another kind of guy who's he's definitely a number 2 type of guy, but a set it and forget it type of guy. Who I know my Vikings are possibly looking at targeting because we need some cornerback help. We need some veteran help. And he's a guy who just played for Pittsburgh. And so Brian Flores is just going to know what he can get out of him a little bit. He's going to be closer to that $8 million, $9 million on average per year, which would be kind of nice. But I mean, Vikings got Pat P out there.
Yep.
I'm cool with letting him go. He doesn't.
Yeah, actually, I have a name for you that I think that you're going to end up. Actually, I think you guys are going to end up signing this guy. I really do. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised with some of the production, but there will also be times that he really will let you down. I think you guys are going to sign Greedy Williams.
Yeah, that's possible. That's a name I've heard.
Greedy Williams has some really interesting athletic abilities. His length is very important to his game. One of the things that has held him back is the amount of injuries that he's had in his career. I think that he has some ability. He could be a pretty solid number 2, really good as a number 3, even though I don't know that he works out of the slot great. But I think Greedy Williams is an interesting name that you guys should probably be on the lookout for, because I think that he would fit exactly what you're trying to do. But for me, a guy that I love for my Browns, depending on the way this defensive scheme goes, and I know some people are down on this guy, but I was so hype about Rock Ya-Sin coming out of fucking college, man. I was like, this is the perfect combination safety who can slide down to the slot, who can cover a tight end. He was kind of profiled as a safety, but has kind of switched into a cornerback role, had a really good couple years with Indy, and then he makes the transition over to, was it Vegas? And it it didn't work the right way. Rocky Sin is a guy that I like who can. We're gonna need a guy to work in the slot because right now we got Greg Newsome, who I think is an outside corner. Denzel Ward, who is definitely an outside corner, cannot go against big body guys. And then an Emerson, who I think is a really good outside corner. We don't have a guy that I'd necessarily love playing the slot. And I think a Rocky Sin as a combo, like safety third cornerback could be a really good fit for our team and a lot of other teams, depending on what you're running scheme wise. Because, man, this kid had so much ability, ran really fucking well. I loved him coming out in the draft. It just hasn't materialized into being exactly what they want. When he left that Colts franchise, it was a very big drop in his play.
Yeah, I was surprised. The Brock Sin looked good with the Colts, and I was surprised that they moved on from him so quick. And he seemed like a good fit as a man scheme type of guy under Patrick Graham's defense there in Vegas. And he was okay, but it wasn't as much production as you would have expected. Not as much as I saw from him with the Colts. So it's kind of an interesting situation where I like him as a prospect. I think he's definitely got to be in the right scheme for him to really flourish. He is a number 2 or a number 3 guy depending on the scheme. And I do like that versatility. Like you said, he came out as more of a safety type because he's a little bit bigger and likes to lay the lumber some. So he's got that positional versatility. And with his age being just about 27 years old, he'd be a good signing. One guy that I want the Vikings to look at too is a Byron Murphy Jr. coming out of Arizona. He's just been constant, solid, average, nothing special. He played most of his time in as a slot guy. Last year, he actually looked better as an outside cornerback. And where we just kind of have a dearth of players right now at cornerback, that's why I'd like to just get a guy that I can set it and forget it and hopefully develop some of our other younger guys. We got a bunch of rookies from last year. We're probably going to be looking at a rookie this year. They say they want to bring Pat P back. I don't think he fits with our system.
I don't think so either.
I love
not the
P,
way you guys are going.
Yeah.
Listen, if you guys transition to a strictly man defense, which I think is the direction that you guys are headed towards
it's going to be off man. That's Flores runs an off man coverage.
And Pat Pete is he's a good press man. Now he could probably play off man.
Used to be.
Well, yeah.
Now he's more of a zone guy because of his speed, man.
He's slowed down quite a bit. I mean, we're talking about one of the more dominant corners probably in our football watching careers in Pat P.
Now, I will say this. If we do end up moving on from Harrison Smith, sure, keep Pat P, but play him at safety.
I think Pat P would fucking kill at a I don't know if he's a free. I think you play him as a slot type box almost because Pat P will come up and fucking smack you in the mouth too.
He can still play corner, and the guy is good for interceptions every year. He's a great team leader. It's just the speed has left him, so safety makes a lot more sense. And if we want to do that sort of transition with him, I'm 100% on board with that. I don't know if he is, but I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah. Well, and that'll be tough because I feel the same way about a Rocky Sin. Like Rocky Sin is now playing corner. I think he profiled better the way that everybody was looking at him in the draft as a versatile, back end defender. You can slide him into the slot. You can put him as a box safety. The kid's got enough speed that you can put him as a fucking middle fielder, and he could do a lot of things. There's going to be an interesting dynamic what happens with my team with the Browns because we're going to make a transition to a much more man scheme defense and how many corners are we going to have on the field at any time. And we have 3 outside corners. We don't have a slot fucking guy. So I could see a Rocky Sin coming down. I could see a Pat P making a transition and doing different things. Players in the NFL now more than probably fucking ever need to have scheme versatility because defenses are not all right, we run a 4-3, go out there, line up with 4 fucking linemen, 3 linebackers, and we'll play defense on the back end. That is not the way the NFL has been for the last 5 to 10 goddamn years. You have to
Yeah.
have scheme versatility.
It is very much so a hybrid. I mean, like your nickel package changes things up. Yes, you can try to.
And you
it
got
all starts
nickels
with the
that are.
line.
You got five defensive backs, right? But that nickel, when you say nickel, that doesn't mean 3 corners and 2 fucking safeties. You could have 3 safeties. There are so many goddamn variations of the nickel defense now that it has become basically the standard of the NFL. That is the base defense, is nickel. It just depends on how you want to manipulate your nickel to help that team with your positions.
Yeah, that's like using my Vikings as an example. Like we're a 3-4 team now, but we probably run 3-4 like 40% of the time, maybe like not even half. So that is how it is for most teams. It's like, yes, you're geared up a little bit differently on that front 7, but that front 7 still has a lot of hybrid flexibility to it. And that's how most teams are going. You need to be able to have players who are flexible in multiple kind of positions and schemes. And so once you start to get older and it starts to kind of shift what sort of schemes you can be on, you lose a little bit of that flexibility. That's where it hurts some of those players.
Well, and that's where you can get at Pat P to extend his career and do those types of things if you transition to a safety. And you have a guy like a Rocky Sin, who I'm touting, that has positional flexibility already and is still young, and you can do those types of different things. Like, those are guys that I am highlighting in this cornerback class, because outside of a couple of those guys, like, I like Shaq Griffin. He's young. I think you can maybe build around him a little bit, but he's not a number 1. He's a 2, maybe a 3. I like a Bradley Roby, but I think I like Bradley Roby more because he was an Ohio State guy more than I like the things that I've seen out of Bradley Roby in the NFL. Yeah. And I could say the same thing about a Ronald Darby.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, with that, I think we can move over to the safeties. And I know
we
really want to talk about here.
Hammered the cornerbacks. So now we're going to hammer the safeties, because my God, do the Browns need fucking safety help so much. We cut John Johnson III, or we will have cut John Johnson III in a post June 1 cut.
There's a lot of good guys out here, though.
There are a ton of guys. Listen, Jesse Bates is the guy I want. There is no doubt in my mind that Jesse Bates is the best safety in this fucking class. He is young, about to be 27-year-old, can be a free safety, also has position flexibility, can do a lot of things. That is absolutely the guy that I want the Browns to go get, but I don't know if we can afford to go get him. So if I'm looking at backup options, I'm bringing this kid home. We drafted him. He played for us for 4 years. And for some goddamn dumbass reason, because the Browns were perpetually in the state, we did not retain our young talent. We let them go. We thought we could find better in the draft, but there fucking wasn't better in the draft. And all this kid did was go on to the Buffalo Bills and become an all-pro damn near every year of his career. If I can't fucking get Jesse Bates, bring Jordan Poyer back fucking home, let him play in front of the fans that were so pumped about him to start with, and then we had to watch him go be a goddamn all-pro in Buffalo. If we don't get Jesse Bates, you better bring fucking Jordan Poyer back home.
Well, what about a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Nope. I'm not on fucking CJ, GJ. Don't want him. I want one of those two. That's fucking it. Okay. No disrespect to CJ, GJ. Good player. Is not the type of guy that I am looking for on the back end of my defense, where I need a fucking free safety to go and roam and make a ton of fucking plays on the ball. I want Jordan Poyer or I want Jesse Bates, guys that have excellent ball skills on the back end.
Okay. Well, I really like Gardner Johnson.
I am very fucking hype about this fucking safety spot. It's one of those two or I'm out. Fuck everybody else.
I feel like Poyer, based on his comments, he wants to go somewhere that taxes differently. I think was one of the things that he talked about. He's like, send me somewhere with like no state income tax or something like that. So I don't know if you got that situation.
We have state income tax. Oh, and I don't know if you've heard, but apparently the state of Ohio is not keen. Well, there's a team in the state of Ohio not keen on paying players if they were somehow to be hurt randomly. So that could possibly hurt us as well.
Yeah, and you got train crashes and stuff going on with chemical spills. Who wants to go there with that?
I was actually so I'm a little anecdote apart from the sports talk that we're doing. I was actually approached about the possibility of going and shooting a documentary and doing some drone shots of the train crash out in East Palestine to document all of the asinine shit that is happening out in East Palestine. I was unable to accept that position. I hope that documentary gets made because it's very, very bad. There's not enough. There's a lot of conversations when it first happened, but there's not enough conversations that are still going on. That is a massive catastrophe that is happening in the state of Ohio that not enough people are talking about. I want to fucking know why things are being said by the EPA that are not fucking true. I will absolutely stand here and put myself in in sniper fire, but it's absolute asinine the things that have happened with no fucking response. I'm sad that I was very sad that I was unable to go and help and shoot some footage via drone for that documentary, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a interesting situation there. It's interesting how it is exactly what happened in a book turned movie as well. I feel like we have a Flint, Michigan situation going on there too.
Yeah,
that's talking about it.
That is exactly what's happening, but nobody else. If you're in Ohio, you know exactly what we're talking about. You know the things that are going on, but nobody else outside of Ohio will talk about it. The government won't talk about it. The EPA won't talk about it. It's frustrating, but this is a sports show. I don't want to get too into the political realm, but it's not great.
Mm-hmm. Beyond basically those like top three guys though, between Bates, Poyer, and Gardner Johnson, you've got Von Bell, Jimmy Ward, and then it just kind of falls off from there with a lot of guys who are,
their
average.
names, but they're
Taylor
not.
Rapp, Juan Hornthal,
Adrian Amos, you got a fucking Von Bell. Like, those are decent guys. Like, I like Von Bell. Von Bell's an Ohio State guy. It's not what I need from my team. Now, he may be a perfect fit for a lot of teams.
And I know that you said John Johnson III. He's actually showing up on PFF's list already as someone who is released.
Yeah, so he has been designated a post June 1 cut. My understanding is once you can designate a guy saying that you are going to be cut post June 1, that's happening. You are allowed to go out and still seek other deals while we wait for post June 1 to happen.
All it does is just change when the money gets paid.
It just slides the money.
So they're free agents at their post June 1 cuts immediately. It's just their money gets paid differently down the line.
Yeah.
So that's already happened. But not a ton of names that I'm super high on after those top three, but a good top three that are there. So interesting group.
Yeah, I mean, I want Jesse Bates so fucking bad. I've been slamming the table on like Gab Gowdy, friend of the show, posted something on Twitter, I don't know, a couple months back. If you could pick any guys from your division to go and get, like you get one guy from each team, who do you go and get? My instant response was, I want Jesse Bates. I want this kid so bad. I think people in Cincinnati they're used to him being better than he was this year, so they're a little off of him. He's one of the best safeties in the league. Just because there's a slight drop in production for 1 year is not a sign for me to get off of this kid. He has been fantastic from the moment he stepped foot in the state of Ohio. Give me Jesse Bates. If not, bring me Jordan Poyer back.
All righty. Well, fair enough. Anyone else that you want to talk about, though? That kind of wraps it up. I don't know if you want to get into kickers since we've got all of Matt Gay out there available to.
No, I'm actually good. I'm good on the special teamers. I mean, Mason Crosby's a free agent. Robbie Gould actually did say that he's like, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, he's going to test the market. Good as Gould will be somewhere else pretty soon. So it'll be interesting.
But I got nothing on the special teamers, man. Like kickers are and I hate to say this because I love Pat McAfee. I love specialists, but they're a dime a dozen at this point. You're going to have 3 specialists on your team unless you got a good one.
Yeah.
So,
all right, man. Well, anything else you need to talk about today before we get out of here? This is a long episode, 3-hour episode of our pre-free agency primer here. We're going to see literally, I'm talking tomorrow is the day, guys. You're going to start seeing a lot of shit happening. I've been posting a lot of retweet type stuff in the Lineman Lounge Facebook page. It is going to be even crazier starting tomorrow. Okay. It's going to be tough to track. I'm going to try to be as all over it as I can. I don't have to wake up early tomorrow because I don't work until the afternoon, but I am going to wake up early to try to keep track of all this movement for you guys. So that way we don't miss anything too crazy. We're going to try to keep up some good free agency tracker lists on our own. So that way we can report next week on it. But it's about to go down tomorrow. You're going to see a lot of movement.
Yeah, it's going to be fucking wild next week because the tampering period, the legal tampering period opens up at 1:00 tomorrow. Shit's going to be fucking wild. It's going to hit fast, hard. Evo does a great job on the Facebook page. I try to do my best to keep up on the Twitter to give you guys all of the information. I'm very, very excited. It's going to be a wild time.
It's the one time a year that I turn my Twitter on with notifications, and I just follow like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and the Lineman Lounge. Those are the 3 sources that I need for my information. So I've got the notifications on for those 3 things, and I turn it on that one time a year. So that's when we're going to see it all popping off tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to go crazy. Also, fucking March Madness is getting ready to start up. We're going to do a bracket challenge. Once we figure out what the fucking brackets are, we'll find that out tonight. But man, it's going to be a wild next couple of weeks. Fuck, NCAA basketball is always fun. But I got to tell you, man, I am so fucking excited to see what happens over this next 72 to fucking what 128 hours or however long it took that asshole to cut his arm off in the movie.
Yeah. James Franco.
Well, fuck that guy. But I'm super, super pumped to see the way the week turns out. I got nothing else for today. So, Evo, unless you got anything, we're going to get the fuck out of here.
I'm good to go, man. Thank you all for tuning in to the Lineman Lounge. It has been fun. Put your seatbelts on. It's about to get rip-roaring fun starting tomorrow.
Yeah, shit's about to get crazy. If you guys want to interact with us, go to the Twitter page or the Twitter profile at Lineman Lounge. Facebook group is going to be going ape shit over the next week. We got TikTok, Instagram, all of the social medias. We are also able to be listened to anywhere podcasts are found, and you can look at these beautiful faces get hype as fuck as these deals come out. Next week on the YouTube, we appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for rocking with us. The most important thing you guys can do is give us some of your time, and we appreciate it every time you do. We'll see you next week.